Chapter 1240. Su Qing is indeed smart. Renbachien looked at the report in his hand and shook his head with a smile. Did Hua cause any trouble this time? Renbachien looked up and asked. The princess didn't cause any trouble. The man in black standing below thought for a while and added, she just taught a few people a lesson. 2 of them were the princes of Hou Yan, but the emperor didn't say anything. Oh. Renbachien felt a little strange. Since Su Qing was so smart, his son shouldn't be stupid, right? Tell me about it. A moment later, Renbachien was deep in thought after listening to the report. The story was very simple. It wasn't that someone was blind enough to provoke Hua, but that there were 2 misunderstandings. Except for the 2 princes who were beaten up a little miserably, the others were fine. The problem was that both of them were misunderstandings. Hua then beat them up, and both of them were pretenses. This was too much of a coincidence. Forget it, it's a coincidence. Renbachien shook his head and ignored it. After all, it was a small matter that wasn't worth his time. Since Su Qing is so straightforward. Renbachien took out a form from the table with the names of some technologies on it. He wanted to draw a part of it for someone to give to Su Qing. These were the technologies that Dao had given them. Renbachien didn't care much about these low-level technologies now. These low-value-added technologies weren't very meaningful. He needed something more advanced, and manpower was always a big problem. Even after working hard for more than a decade and teaching 16 hours a day in the streets and alleys of all the cities, the literacy rate was still not high. The effect of letting adults learn how to read and write all their lives hadn't met expectations. Fortunately, young people nowadays were pretty good. Since the establishment of primary and secondary schools in various cities, and the Yun Nation scholars were sent to be teachers, he could finally see fruitful fruit trees. The only problem was that it wasn't time to harvest them yet. If he had a choice, Renbachien hoped that they could go to college instead of being sent to factories after graduating from junior high school. Renbachien put this thought aside and picked up the top piece of the list of technologies, which included a series of low-level technologies such as soap, glass, and textiles. After thinking for a while, Renbachien picked up another piece of paper with a list of agricultural technologies including animal husbandry, breeding, and farming. Following which, Renbachien took out the 3rd piece of paper. On it, there were some techniques related to cement, basic chemical engineering, and smelting. Renbachien drew a line under some of them. Su Qing was quite open-minded, and his son didn't provoke anyone. He was beaten up quite badly by Hua, yet he didn't complain at all. Renbachien didn't want to be too harsh on him, or else he would have just given him 1.5 pages. More of it could be considered as compensation. Get someone to sort out these 2 forms and the underlying technical information and send them to Hou Yan, Renbachien said as he placed the 3 pieces of paper at the corner of the table. After the man in black retreated, Renbachien rested his chin on his hand and felt as if he could recall something. After a while, an idea flashed through Renbachien's mind, and he slapped his thigh hard. Renbachien burst into laughter. That guy is waiting for me here. Renbachien finally understood and shook his head with a smile. He had originally planned to give Su Qing 1.5 pages. Su Qing had done a good job and he had a good relationship with him, so it was normal to give him 2 pages. In the end, because his son was beaten up, he gave 2.5 pages. The extra half a page meant that there were 7 or 8 more pieces of technical information, all of which could be put to use. This was Su Qing's plan. That guy deliberately created those 2 misunderstandings to make Hua misunderstand and then beat up his own son. He racked his brains just to get more benefits. He didn't say a word and asked me to think about it myself. In the end, I felt embarrassed and compensated him. Renbachien found it a little funny. This guy had been scheming all his life just to get some benefits. Of course, if Renbochin really pretended that nothing had happened, that guy would definitely think of ways to take advantage of this matter in the future. In any case, he wouldn't lose anything. Now, this was the best gain for Su Qing. The two princes were beaten up, and it didn't look good on them. Hua was also soft-hearted and knew that he had misunderstood Su Qing. When he met the two princes again in the future, he definitely wouldn't go too far. Moreover, they also obtained 7 or 8 more pieces of technical information. Although it was only 7 or 8 pieces of technical information, they were all mature technologies that involved far more than this number. This guy was much smarter than Emperor Qin. However, their situations were different. Su Qing was the emperor who restored the empire. His temperament, wisdom, and control of the imperial court were all very powerful. As for Emperor Qin, he ascended the throne in his teens and lost his power. All these years, he had been an emperor with only a title but no power. Taking back his power and suppressing the aristocratic families was his entire goal all these years. Other than this, nothing else was important. In fact, as Renbochin thought, although Hua's 3 views weren't right, his heart wasn't bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't have so many sons in the capital. While Renbochin was listening to what Hua had been doing these days, Hua specially went to visit the 2 unlucky guys who had been beaten up by her. She also got to know 2 friends, a princess and a concubine. Although they had ulterior motives, they were very smart, and Hua got along well with them. They didn't have any complaints about Hua beating up the 2 princes. As a result, Hua felt even more guilty. If Renbochin knew about this situation, he could only say, dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and the son of a mouse can dig holes. What Su Qing was, his descendants would be like. Their brains were full of schemes. Hua's brain was full of muscles like her mother's. They looked fierce, overbearing, and not easy to deal with. In fact, they were easy to deceive. The premise was that they didn't use force against her. Furthermore, they shouldn't make her feel annoyed when they were scheming. Almost at the same time, the palace of Great Xia was in a mess. 10 minutes ago, Xia Yonghe was cultivating in his courtyard when a bald, burly man descended from the sky and injured him within 10 moves. The other party was unscathed and swaggered away. Xia Yonghe was dumbfounded. He had no idea what had happened. He could recognize the identity of the other party because it was too easy. That fierce face, wall-like body, and savage aura were typical of an aboriginal expert. Moreover, he was an expert from Longevity Heaven who could open up the heaven and earth domain. However, he didn't know what the other party wanted to do. Without saying a word, the other party jumped in and beat him up before swaggering away. The other party came all the way from Dayo just to beat him up. This was obviously not revenge. In that case, what did the other party want to do? What exactly is going on? Emperor Xia frowned and asked in a deep voice. Xia Yonghe wasn't only the #1 expert in the royal family of Great Xia, but he was also the #1 expert in Great Xia, Ho Yen, and the Qin nation. Other than Qi Zixiao, he was the #1 expert. Xia Yonghe shook his head. He didn't know either. Emperor Xia was silent for a while before saying, "Who exactly is it? Is the difference in strength really that big? He actually defeated you so easily and came out unscathed." If it was Qi Zixiao, he could still accept it. However, the Aboriginals actually had such an expert? "Uncle, you are an expert who opened up the heavens and earth, the strongest expert in the world in the past century." Xia Yonghe's expression turned ugly. He shook his head and didn't want to speak. He had paid a huge price to reach this stage. For this reason, he couldn't leave the palace too far away for more than 3 days, and it would be difficult for him to advance further in his life. However, after paying such a huge price, a random person jumped out and beat him up like he was playing and then swaggered away. How could he accept this? Emperor Xia thought for a while and said, since the other party left, it seems that nothing happened. Maybe someone just broke through and wanted to find an expert to test his strength. This situation wasn't uncommon. However, Xia Yonghe felt even more depressed when he heard this. In any case, it was fine as long as the other party wasn't seeking revenge. One had to know that the current Great Xia was supported by Xia Yonghe. If anything happened to Xia Yonghe, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although Xia Yonghe's reputation was damaged this time, nothing major happened in the end. As the Emperor of Great Xia, he always considered stability. However, one day later, Xia Yonghe was attacked again. Another bald man jumped out, beat Xia Yonghe up, and then swaggered away. Although it wasn't the same person, it was the same recipe and the same taste. Xia Yonghe was completely dumbfounded. He didn't know what was going on in this world. Why did so many experts appear and each of them came to beat him up? This was already 2 in a row. Emperor Xia and Xia Yonghe didn't know what happened. In the end, they could only send someone to Dao to find out if something had happened in Dao. However, on the third night, a woman appeared in front of Xia Yonghe and beat him up. Xia Yonghe, what exactly do you want? Tell me. Set a small goal first, for example, 1 second. Chapter 1241. Emperor Xia and Xia Yonghe didn't know what was going on until Hua Er left Hou Yan and headed to Great Xia. This was a threat. After all, Great Xia had been the center of the human race for thousands of years, and the people there regarded everyone as country bumpkins. Even though Great Xia had been divided into 2 and Dao was far superior to Great Xia in all aspects. However, many people in this era had never left the 150 kilometers radius of their homes in their entire lives. In the eyes of many people, Great Xia was still the center of the world. This also resulted in the habitual arrogance of the people of Great Xia. As a result, as the #1 expert in Great Xia, Hou Yan, and the Qin nation, he was the only expert who could open up the heavens and earth. After being praised for so long and acting like a tyrant for more than 10 years, many people were afraid that he had an incorrect understanding of his own strength and would treat certain people the wrong way. After all, the experts who opened up the heavens and earth were still very strong. There were less than 100 of them in the entire human race, and they were all in the 60,000 mountains. There was only one wild expert. If such an expert really courted death, even though it wasn't a big deal, Hua Er might suffer. After all, she wasn't here to make friends, and it was easy to cause conflict. Even if he were to be hacked into pieces, that would be a problem for the future. Furthermore, this worry wasn't groundless. Renbaqian had received news from many sources that Xia Yonghe had indeed become quite arrogant in recent years. Therefore, there was such a threat. He believed that after these few days, Xia Yonghe would remain calm and rational most of the time. The only unlucky person was Xia Yonghe. He didn't even know the reason and was beaten up several times. Someone would come out of nowhere and beat him up, and he was almost autistic. He only understood after a few days. Xia Yonghe was filled with grief and indignation. You should have said something at the time. You didn't say anything, just came over to beat me up, and even changed people to beat me up every day. Is there anyone like you? Can't you be human? Xia Yonghe, whom Great Xia relied on, was beaten up in different ways every day, and the final result was Hua Er's diplomatic mission to Great Xia went smoothly. However, Renbaqian hadn't paid much attention to these matters. Although he usually asked about Hua Er's situation, it was only because he was a father and was concerned about his daughter's first serious matter, who she met, and what she did every day. Recently, his main focus had been on helping the Empress approve memorials to the throne, as well as a few other major matters. Helping the Empress approve memorials to the throne was even more tiring than handling court affairs when the Empress wasn't around. At the very least, most of the memorials couldn't even reach him back then. Recently, the Empress had been working too hard and had to attend to almost every matter personally. As a result, Renbachien was the unlucky one. Especially since there were a few important matters to attend to recently. One was to set up a production line to produce televisions. Dayo's television technology had been perfected for a long time. Part of it was based on Earth's technology, while the other part was based on new technology developed on the basis of Earth's technology. Although the materials in Dayo and Earth were different in many aspects, for example, this world didn't even have oil, as long as they knew the answer, they would be able to solve the problem step by step. There was never only one path to success. Even on Earth, there were several different types of display screens, and different technologies were used. The other thing was to prepare a television station, DYTV1. Those unlucky fellows who were about to graduate from the academy were helping out with this. After all, those students were more creative than others. However, Renbachien didn't have high requirements. His main goal was to have a news broadcast. As the mouthpiece of the imperial court, news broadcast was a good thing. As for the other programs, on paper, there were a livelihood program, an agricultural technology program, and a gourmet food program that specialized in teaching people how to cook. In the early stages, these programs should be broadcast in rotation every day. After all, these programs involved various aspects, whether it was livelihood or agricultural technology. Presumably, no one would object if they were broadcast a few times a day. In addition, there was the highlight of the recent busy program, the high-altitude reconnaissance rocket. This had always been the focus of the laboratory. After working hard for so many years, they were finally going to see results. China launched its first high-altitude reconnaissance rocket in 1958. Currently, Dayo's technological reserves were much stronger than China's at that time. Overall, it shouldn't be weaker than China at the beginning of the 21st century. This was under the circumstances that China was lagging behind in many aspects. Renbachien had never stopped inviting scientists. Today, there were thousands of scientific and technological volunteers from Earth and Dayo. The frontiers of Dayo's technology were close to the current Earth. Around 2090, these were all brought by those new scientists. However, there was still a long way to go if he wanted to digest it and make it his own, and develop a technology that was suitable for this world based on it. Despite this, with the game guide in hand, Dayo's technological development was still very fast. Even though they were currently walking with a limp, this situation would eventually improve as batches of students completed their studies and entered various positions in society and research institutes. How's the preparation going? Renbachien took some time to listen to the report. The rocket base was a little far from the capital. It would take about 7 to 8 hours to get there by car, and it was difficult for Renbachien to find the time to make a trip. We have done the final checks and have solutions to all the problems. It is estimated that it will be launched in half a month, the person in charge of the rocket base said. Very good. I can't wait any longer, but I'm still waiting. Be careful, you are more professional than me in this aspect. I hope to see it successfully fly into the sky and stay in low Earth orbit. In the future, I will be able to look up and see that one of the stars in the sky belongs to us, Renbachien reminded. The person in charge said confidently, yes, we are professionals. Yes, we are professionals. I believe that our big baby can complete its mission. We have been preparing for this day for 3 years. In fact, it's the fuel that is holding us back, not us. Now that the new fuel is very effective, nothing can stop us. That's for the best. Renbachien smiled happily. You can now seek the opinions of the others and decide what reward you want. After waiting for so many years, it was finally time. As long as the rocket could reach the desired position, the satellite could be sent up. With the satellite, there were many things that could be done. The transit signal was only the most basic. In addition, there was reconnaissance. Up until now, Renbachien still didn't know the true appearance of this world. Who knew if Xixiao was round or flat, but judging from the curve of the Earth, it definitely wasn't round. In addition, the next step was to use the satellite to launch an attack in space. He had some ideas that had been verified in the laboratory on Earth. Now, all that was left was a live-fire exercise. Of course, the most important thing was to look at the red moon in the sky. What the hell was that? Up until now, he couldn't forget his astonishment when he first heard that the moon was fake. That thing had been hanging in the sky for thousands of years or even longer, but it turned out to be fake. This news was too shocking. Using an astronomical telescope to observe it from the ground, no matter how you looked at it, it seemed real. Whether it was the light, shadow, or other details, the moon looked real. When the satellite was in the sky and observed it from a close distance, it should be able to discover something. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Remember, booksellers. Chapter 1242. Are you ready? Renbachien asked. Of course, we've been preparing for this day. Now, it's our turn to shock the world. The person in charge of the rocket base smiled confidently and raised his chin, looking proud and complacent. As a professional, he had the right to do so. Start your performance according to the plan and open this grand ceremony for us. Today, you are the main characters. Renbachien wasn't stingy with his praise. It wouldn't be too much to praise this group of volunteers who didn't seek fame or profit. Of course, this was on the premise that they weren't lazy. Otherwise, was it because their necks were too stiff or because his 40-meter-long saber wasn't fast enough? From the looks of it, they were doing very satisfactorily. Although the progress wasn't as fast as expected, this was science and had to be done step by step. Even if you knew how to fly, you had to reach the basics first. Half a month passed by in a flash, and today was the day of the rocket launch. Many of Dayo's big shots gathered at the rocket base that was 7 to 8 hours away from the capital, even though they didn't understand the significance of this launch. It seems like Erhua won't be able to make it back in time. Renbachien turned around and walked to the Empress. Oh, the Empress responded faintly and didn't care much. In fact, she was only slightly better than Tong Zhenya and the others. At least she knew that with satellites, it was much easier to surf the internet and watch TV series. Erhua actually wants to witness history, Renbachien said casually, not caring about the Empress's reaction. Although I'm in a hurry, I encountered some trouble. Someone dares to cause trouble for her. The Empress was slightly surprised. That's right. I opened this mountain and planted this tree. Erhua encountered a robber who damaged her carriage and threw a big tantrum. Renbachien chatted casually with the Empress as if he was gossiping. This incident was indeed quite unexpected. Even Xia Yonghe was beaten into submission. As a result, Erhua encountered a robber who cut the tree on her way back. Her carriage was too fast and crashed into the robber. This incident was really like a joke. However, there are benefits to it. At least it taught her a lesson. Renbachien grinned. Speeding is fun for a while, but it's always fun for a long time. The Empress rolled her eyes. Other people might not have noticed anything, but the Empress had been on Earth for a long time. You don't seem to be thinking about today's ascension. I thought it was important to you. The Empress said. Renbachien nodded. Your Majesty, you are right. It is indeed very important. I believe in them. Besides, even if they fail, it's not a big deal. It's just a delay. We are on the right path. Even if we fail once, as long as we can find the problem, we will succeed next time. What can this thing do in the sky? Tong Jinya moved closer to Renbaqian and the Empress and asked. In this regard, he did not have any concept. Although this thing seemed very powerful to be able to fly in the sky, it didn't surprise him that it even had an airplane. Renbaqian thought about how to explain this to Tong Jinya. Finally, he said, in the future, every time you go to a brothel, I will know immediately. Now you know. Tong Jinya curled his lips. Then, he thought of something and widened his eyes. Are you saying that this thing can monitor us? This can't be done, but as long as we succeed this time, the next satellite will be able to do it. In other words, every time you go to a brothel, Her Majesty will know immediately. Tong Jinya pretended to be shocked and gloated unabashedly. Renbaqian glanced at him and gritted his teeth. Could this old man still converse? Furthermore, was the Empress someone who cared about such things? Yes, she was. However, she wasn't the one monitoring the surveillance every day. He was still the one in charge of this thing. Everyone chatted for an hour. Thousands of miles away, many students from the Black Bamboo Academy were watching the live broadcast of the rocket in their classrooms. This was a major event for Dayo and the world. The bunch of old fogies in the imperial court didn't understand the significance of the rocket, but the students in the school did. These students were very excited for the entire day. Even though the image on the screen was of a rocket that stood there motionlessly. They understood the significance of this rocket. Dayo had finally taken an important step in exploring this world. Even though not all of them knew about the existence of the foreign races and didn't know the military value of rockets and satellites. To them, this rocket represented the technological strength of Dayo, represented an important step forward for Dayo, and also represented their future. In addition to them, many street corners in the capital were also broadcasting live, but there weren't many people watching. Most of them didn't understand the significance of the motionless iron cylinder. No one explained it to them. As the preparations came to an end and the countdown was about to end, Renbaqian's surroundings gradually quietened down. Although most people didn't know the significance of the rocket, it didn't prevent them from knowing that Zhao Prince Consort attached great importance to it, which meant that this thing was extremely useful. As the last seconds ticked by, Renbaqian looked at the button in the hands of the staff member in front of him and pressed it heavily. Start, ignite, Renbaqian said in a deep voice. Following the sound, everyone, whether it was behind the huge glass in the base or in the streets of the Black Bamboo Academy and the capital thousands of miles away, could see the rocket spitting out orange flames. Although they didn't know how big this rocket was, they could roughly guess its size by comparing it to the other buildings in the footage. With the thrust of the flames, the rocket gradually began to lift off. It's flying. The young people in the Black Bamboo Academy cheered. The graceful Tong Lan sat by the window, looked at the mirror image on the screen, and listened to the cheers from afar. Her mouth twitched slightly. She felt that if this thing was in her hands, she would be able to do it. Even so, she was still fascinated by the rocket on the screen as it gradually left the ground and soared into the sky. This was what she should be doing. Ignition successful. The rocket has lifted off. Everything is going according to plan. There's no problem. The first segment is beginning to detach, and the second segment is igniting. Renbaqian looked up at the sky along with the noise around him. At present, it seemed like they were doing well. It's a success. Half an hour later, the rocket gradually left the atmosphere and began to enter the predicted orbit. Only then did the base begin to burst into thunderous cheers, and everyone looked excited. After a few years of hard work, they had finally achieved it. However, this was only the beginning. The next step was to send the satellite into the sky. And this rocket would fall in a few hours. The orbit that the rocket reached wasn't a complete vacuum, and there was still thin air. After the centrifugal force decreased, it would be brought back to Zhixiao Earth and star by the planet's gravity. However, that wasn't important anymore. The world was so big, and only God knew where it would land. After all, he didn't have enough experience. Historical records: on the night of the 346-year Great Xia, a meteor fell into the palace. Several palaces were destroyed, and many people were injured. Emperor Xia, we were attacked by Dayo. What was Qi Zixia trying to do? This wreckage clearly had the style of Dayo. Chapter 1243. Those who take the boat are all in the mortal world. Those who are fated can sit on the boat. Those who are not lucky can't get on the boat. Take your seat and go to transcendence. The Dharma boat leads you to the other shore. The sun and moon fly by like a shuttle, making you grow old. You have reached the end of your life. Lu Qing had a pious expression on his face as he recited the scriptures with the others. After a long time, they heard someone knock on the wooden fish and say, "Class dismissed." Only then did everyone rise and exchange their insights with each other. Now that the school of White Lotus had developed, it was no longer just a few people spreading their teachings everywhere like before. Especially after the crystal balls containing the image of the Ajati matriarch were sent over, the sect developed even faster. The image in the crystal ball, no matter from which angle, would appear to be the front image of the Ajati matriarch sitting cross-legged. Even if dozens of people looked at it at the same time from different angles, everyone would see the same image. The magic of the crystal ball made it even more convincing. Currently, there were over 1 million believers in the vicinity of Stainless City alone. Among them, there were people from various races, and they were even spreading all the way south. Among the upper, middle, and lower races, the lower races were the most numerous. There were also quite a few believers from the middle races, and there were even a few believers from the upper races. The structure of the school of White Lotus was also clear. At the top was the Grand Priest, the spokesperson of the Ajati matriarch. Below them was the officiator, who was in charge of unifying an area. Below them were the Red Robes, and they were in charge of the development and arrangement of their respective races' believers. Every Red Robe was an extremely famous person in their respective race. In different races, the Ajati matriarch combined the myths of each race and developed different gods. Below that, there were also sacrifices, lectures, imparting skills, and good men and women. The tasks were all different. Among them, the kind-hearted children and kind-hearted women were responsible for controlling small groups, and each small group was a big family. It could be said that the current White Lotus cult was very strict and had a firm grasp over all the believers. When one side was in trouble, they would come to help each other. The believers of many races helped each other, forming an extremely powerful force. Although there were no top-notch experts among them, they included people from the Unsullied City and the surrounding regions. The courtyard that Lu Qing and the others were currently in was the residence of a member of the Nashi clan. "Priestess, I've heard a piece of news," a blue-faced alien respectfully said to Lu Qing. "There might be a war. I'm worried that some of our brothers and sisters will spill their blood in foreign lands. What's going on?" Lu Qing's heart thumped. He took the Blue Spirit Clan man to the room next door and asked him about it. The Earth Spirits went to the north to suppress the Forsaken race, but they failed. When they left, they had tens of thousands of soldiers and tens of thousands of powerful mounts, but when they returned, there were only about 2,000 clansmen left. The Rolling Wind tribe was greatly shaken, and it is possible that they will summon the Flint tribe and the Scarlet Sand tribe to suppress the Forsaken tribe. Lu Qing's expression was warm as he said gratefully, "Thank you for your information. This will allow some of our brothers and sisters to prepare early. There are many of our brothers and sisters in the Scarlet Sand tribe. War is killing, bloodshed, and sin, but we are powerless to control our destiny. We can only bid farewell to our brothers and sisters with tears. There will be a day." The Blue Spirit Race disciple's expression dimmed as he thought of the Heaven Lord's formidable strength. After sending off the members of the Blue Spirit clan, Lu Qing quickly transmitted the news to Lin Dong. After a few rounds, the news reached Ren Baqian's desk. The Rolling Wind clan actually reacted so quickly. Ren Baqian frowned. He originally thought that the Earth Spirit clan wouldn't rely on external forces and would have at least a few years to prepare for the next war. He didn't expect that not long after the Earth Spirit clan left the wall between the two worlds, there would be movement in Stainless City. Ren Baqian retrieved the information on the Flint tribe and the Scarlet Sand tribe. At present, he had collected information on all the foreign races in Stainless City, as well as some information on the other races in other regions. He had already collected information on almost half of the other races. There were a total of 36 superior races and more than 200 intermediate races. Within the territory controlled by the Rolling Stone tribe, there were 31 intermediate races and 17 main races. The other 14 races only had a small number of races within the territory of the Rolling Stone tribe. The Flint Stone tribe was one of the 17 main races within the territory of the Rolling Stone tribe, and it was one of the more powerful races. The characteristic of this race was their large size. An adult Flint Stone tribe member was more than 4 meters tall and had a stone-like skin that was covered in flames. Furthermore, the Flint Stone tribe was extremely powerful. An adult Flint Stone tribe member had the strength of at least a few thousand kilograms. Coupled with their stone-like skin, their combat power was amazing, and they weren't afraid of death. The only drawback was that they weren't very smart. The Scarlet Sand tribe and the Flint Stone tribe usually lived together. Although they were an inferior race, they were also one of the stronger ones. Not only were they not afraid of heat and flames, but they could also swallow red sand to form a type of red sand arrow. They could then use their unique organs to compress the air and shoot it out. Its power wasn't inferior to that of a gun. The Flint Stone tribe, which was good at close combat, and the Scarlet Sand tribe, which was good at long-range combat, worked together. However, Ren Baqian didn't care too much. The Scarlet Sand tribe could only shoot 10 red sand arrows a day, which couldn't compare to a machine gun. As for the Flint Stone tribe, the layer of stone on their body was indeed amazing, and their skin was covered in high-temperature flames. However, their weakness was also very obvious, and they were afraid of water. It wasn't difficult to get water when they were prepared. Moreover, there was something called a fire extinguisher. What really concerned Ren Baqian was the intention of the Rolling Wind tribe. Even deeper was the indefinite Heavenly Lord of Stainless City. She wasn't restricted like the deity of the Earth Spirit clan. If this deity was provoked, it wouldn't be easy to deal with. Ren Baqian didn't know if the broken body of the human emperor could stop it. However, the broken body of the human emperor could only be used 3 times, and it was best not to use it if possible. This news made Ren Baqian's good mood disappear without a trace. The foreign races were always a big worry. According to Ren Baqian, I'm already a few decades old, but I'm still working hard every day because of this group of enemies. Because of this news, even the progress of the forward operating base at the border between the two worlds had to be slowed down. He wanted to guess the intentions of the Rolling Wind tribe through the movements of the foreign races. The news spread very slowly, mainly because the movements of the foreign races were too slow. After a full month, Ren Baqian finally confirmed the second piece of news. Is there any news? During this period, the Empress was very calm. In any case, she just had to fight them. If she had the time to think about this, she might as well drink more wine in the palace so that she wouldn't have to drink when the war started. 5,000 people from the Flint Stone tribe and 80,000 people from the Scarlet Sand tribe. There are no other races. They are slightly stronger than the Earth Spirit clan, but the difference isn't big. It seems like they don't want an all-out war. Otherwise, it wouldn't be these two races. Even if they don't have much food, they can still send out an army that is several times their size. The Empress leaned on the recliner and moved her body to make herself more comfortable. Well, with this military strength, they are most likely trying to occupy the two gaps in the border between the two worlds and firmly suppress us in the 60,000 mountains. As long as we can't cross the border between the two worlds, we will never be able to become stronger. It seems like they are still waiting for the Earth Spirit clan to solve the problem themselves. However, there is no need to worry. Our navy has already discovered the gap at the coast. The problem now is to take over the gap without them discovering it. The White Lotus Society is developing very quickly and has a large number of believers. It is best if we can control the caravan that travels between the coast and Stainless City. This way, we can cover up the news that we are in control of the gap. Water battle. I'm not worried if it's on the surface of the water. If it's underwater, it will be a little troublesome. That is their home ground. The Empress frowned. Fighting in the water was different from fighting on land. It was very difficult for humans to fight those amphibious races under the water. It is said that there is an amphibious race called the sickle. They are most powerful in the water and can form an acupoint effect through rapid slashes. Not only are their slashes powerful, but they can also generate hundreds of degrees of heat and electric currents. They are indeed very difficult to deal with. However, in some ways, this race is actually very easy to deal with. I have an idea. We don't have to worry about them. Renbochin shook his head. What idea? What do you plan to do? The Empress asked curiously. Your Majesty, you probably don't know what it means to illegally electrocute fish. Renbochin seemed to have thought of something interesting and smiled brightly. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Remember, book house. Chapter 1244. Somewhere along the coastline in the depths of the 60,000 mountains. A forward operating base with hundreds of staff and 8 berths was located here. Chao Zhong sat on a cliff near the coast. All he could see was the endless blue sea with white birds flying nearby. The sun, the ospreys, the moist air, and the ubiquitous smell of the sea were all there was here. Below him was the last harbor of the human race in the 60,000 mountains. A few steel warships were docked at the harbor, and 2 steel freighters that had just arrived in the morning were busy unloading supplies. The people on the freighters looked like ants. That was all there was here. To many people, this place was very boring. Apart from maintenance and overhaul, there was also training. After staying here for 3 months, even a sow would have delicate features. However, to Chao Zhong, this was his favorite place. Ever since he saw the One Piece comic more than a decade ago, he had been attracted by the freedom and the fight against the heavens. In the end, he chose to graduate early and join the newly established navy. However, life on the sea was different from what he had imagined. There weren't so many islands, and there weren't any drinking pirates. There was only the sea and sky, endless turbulence thousands of meters away from the coastline, countless submerged reefs on the coast, and sea beasts that occasionally crossed the boundary. From Wangjing all the way south, 13 ships had sunk in the tens of thousands of kilometers. There were undercurrent sea beasts outside and submerged reefs inside. It was extremely dangerous to find a way through the cracks. Too many of his good friends and subordinates had died along the way. Even his flagship had been changed twice. There were too many things entrusted to this sea and this fleet. He felt that he couldn't leave it anymore. He had a simple thought. Leaving the sea means betraying the sacrifices of so many friends and subordinates. However, Chao Zhong wasn't thinking about this at this time. He just looked calmly at the sea in the distance and wondered what was in the depths of the sea. At this moment, the big bell in the base was suddenly rung. Chao Zhong stretched out his hand and jumped up from the ground, rushing back to the base. What's wrong? What happened? 6 rings. We've encountered an enemy. Where is the enemy? There were Marines running around everywhere in the base. Some of them were Aboriginals, while others were people from the Yun Nation. In terms of going to sea, the people of the Yun Nation were much better than the Aboriginals. What happened? Chao Zhong was no more than 30 years old, but he was calm and collected. Many people calmed down when they saw him. Lieutenant, it's the Black Dragon. It was attacked 200 nautical miles to the south. The attackers are from the Sickle clan. Chao Zhong was astonished. The Scythe tribe lived 500 nautical miles to the south, and their range of activity usually did not exceed 200 nautical miles. How could they have come so far this time? Can the Black Dragon still hold on? Tell them to leave quickly and wait for reinforcements, Chao Zhong said solemnly. There was no point in being anxious. 200 nautical miles would take at least 10 hours to reach. It's too late, Nightmare Dragon has sunk. The moment they were attacked, a huge hole was opened in the bottom of the ship. There's an expert among them, they only sent back the location and the identity of the enemy, and then there's no movement. The person who reported had a gloomy look on his face. Chao Zhong's face turned ashen. He turned around and punched a hole in the wall. His classmates were on the Black Dragon, as well as 120 Marines. Lieutenant, gather people to take revenge. Isn't it just the Scythe tribe? We still have a lot of explosives to blow up the submerged reefs. At most, we'll sacrifice our lives. No matter what, we have to recoup our losses with interest. Chao Zhong was annoyed by their noise and said coldly, all of you, shut up. Do you think this is a street fight? Or a fight in the pugilistic world? Splattering blood on the spot in a fit of rage. It's fine if you all die, but if you delay His Highness, who knows how many more lives will be lost. Are you going to use your lives to make up for it? You're going to use other people's lives to make up for it. How many people died at Jiaotou Stream half a year ago? We can't just let it go like this, someone said, unconvinced. To the Aboriginals, death wasn't scary. What they were afraid of was dying sullenly. If their comrades were killed and they couldn't avenge them, it would be too sullen. Chao Zhong also felt sullen. However, he was the lieutenant of the Navy and had studied at Black Bamboo Academy. He had some understanding of the conflicts between humans and foreign races. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't be as rash as the others. Right now, he was especially touched by a saying, for a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too long. If he hadn't read so many books, he might have directly rushed forward. However, it was precisely because he had read so many books and thought too much about things that he couldn't be as rash and reckless as them. Like a gentleman, he had read too many books and couldn't recklessly take revenge. Sooner or later, we will go to war with them and make them pay for it. Go back and make arrangements. Although the turtle dragon has sunk, the heads of our comrades must be brought back. Also, find out why their range of activities has expanded so much. After chasing everyone away, Chao Zhong left a messenger to contact the capital and received Renbaqian in no time. After listening to the whole story, Renbaqian was silent for a while and said, reduce your range of activities for the next few days. As for revenge, it will be avenged very soon. Very soon, we will make our move against them. However, you all can't clash with them privately. I still have to prepare some things and send them over. When we make our move, we have to strike like lightning and not let any of them live. As for investigating the expansion of their range of activities, you all don't have to go. I will send some experts over. After hearing this, Chao Zhong felt more at ease. He was afraid that the revenge would take too long. Since Her Highness had said so, it should be done very soon. This was a sea and land transportation route. The progress was slow before because they needed to find a route to avoid and clear submerged reefs. Now that the route had been opened up, it would only take 2 months for a one-way trip. Renbochin hung up the radio and contacted the border between the two worlds. Li Fu and the others had reoccupied that area after the Earth Spirit left. After handing the matter over to Li Fu, there would naturally be a few experts who were good at spying. He also wanted to know why the blade sickle had expanded their range of activities. Was it because of the recent mobilization of Stainless City or some other reason? Would it have any impact on the upcoming battle? Then, he made a trip back to Earth and brought 2 sets of nuclear power equipment from the spacecraft to the laboratory for modification. The nuclear power equipment of the spacecraft's engine was mainly stable and stable. If he wanted to electrocute the fish, he needed to output the maximum power in a short period of time in order to cause fatal damage to the blade sickle in a small area of the sea. Half a month passed in a flash. After the nuclear power discharge equipment was modified and tested, it was sent to the cargo ship that was docked in Wangjing. Accompanying it were some researchers in the laboratory who tested and recorded the actual combat power of this set of equipment. The code name for this operation was Legal Electrocution of Fish. At this time, Li Fu also sent back the reason why the blade sickle had appeared in that area of the sea. They were chasing a dragon. First set a small goal, such as 1 second. Remember, booksellers. Chapter 1245. Is this a sickle? It looks like an arthropod. It's amazing. The creator is really great. This is actually an intelligent creature. Look at those buildings. Their intelligence is at least equivalent to that of primitive people, or even more advanced. I'm more curious about their brains, even though they don't look very smart. A few men and women in white coats were in a cave at the bottom of a cliff 1,500 meters away from the sickle's nest. They were amazed by what they saw on the screen. Through the clear seawater, they could see the shallow underwater buildings, and a small number of buildings were located on the shore. Figures could be seen roaming around those buildings. They were an intelligent creature that was 1.5 to 2 meters long, had 3 pairs of legs, and 4 pairs of legs. They did not look like humans at all. Especially the pair of huge claws, it seemed to have great power. The strength of these creatures was related to their lifespan and size. The longer they lived, the bigger they were, and the more powerful they were. At the same time, their colors were brighter. An ordinary sickle had the strength of a Kismet Heaven expert and was mainly greenish-black in color. A sickle with the strength of a Cardinal Heaven expert was mainly rainbow-colored. As for a sickle with the strength of a Longevity Heaven expert, there was only one. It was completely red, and it was 3 meters long. It hibernated in a simple building on the shore every day. Although there weren't many powerful individuals, they were especially difficult to deal with underwater, and their strength was 1 level higher. No one wanted to fight them underwater. Is that a flood dragon? It's really beautiful. The legendary dragon is indeed real. A middle-aged man who looked like a Chinese looked at the huge creature trapped in a cage in a corner of the building complex with an infatuated look in his eyes. The word dissection was practically written on his face. Quick, look, aren't those 2 mating? Do they mate according to the season, or are they in heat like humans? Those 2 are male, all right, may God forgive them. Hey, guys, are you done with your work? Of course, it's just the simplest assembly. It's not difficult for us. That's good. We'll have seafood to eat tomorrow. I wonder how this thing tastes compared to the Boston lobster. The leader of the operation laughed. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at him strangely. What's wrong? I'm your boss now, so you have to respect me. Respect. Do you understand? Why are you looking at me like that? Well, no matter what, these things are intelligent creatures. They have their own culture, language, and simple words. Eating them makes me feel like I'm eating humans, a woman in her 30s said with a look of disgust. The middle-aged Chinese man smiled and said, "You have to say that even if I jump down from here and starve to death, I won't take a bite." "Why?" The woman clearly did not understand the old Chinese joke from 70 to 80 years ago. The middle-aged man smiled and did not explain further. This joke was indeed too old. Not many young people in China nowadays knew about it. The interior of the cave was the size of a basketball court, and there were two huge nuclear power generators for spaceships, which had a power of megawatts. The generator set was connected to 4 cables that were as thick as an arm and covered with a layer of rubber. They were coiled on one side and occupied a third of the cave. The leader pressed a button. A few minutes later, a thin mirror appeared in the air, and a beautiful woman in blue walked out. No matter how many times the crowd saw this scene, they could not believe it. In the shadow of the cave, another person walked out. Tang Gu and Dong Sun were the two best at stealth and assassination among the many experts. "Are you ready?" Tang Gu raised his eyebrows and said lightly. "Yes, you just need to put the front ends of these cables into these 4 points." The leader pulled up the map taken from above and marked the 4 points in red. "As long as we can connect these 4 points, we'll be able to catch all of them." "As long as we can force them out of the sea," Tang Gu said lightly. She didn't really believe that these things could wipe out the enemy in one fell swoop. The 2 huge devices in the corner and the steel cables that were as thick as an arm made it hard for her to believe that they could be so powerful. These experts and scientists had a completely different understanding of power. After sending these 4 cables to the designated points, nail them into the sand with these steel awls. "Send me a message when you leave the water. Remember, don't go into the water or touch water. When they're electrocuted, don't touch them in any way." The leader warned. He had to warn them. Even now, there were many people who were electrocuted in the imperial capital every year. He did not understand why those people liked to step on electric wires or telephone poles so much. Just because the birds were fine didn't mean that they were fine. 220V wasn't fatal to most aboriginals, but this one was enough to turn even a cardinal heaven expert into charcoal if they didn't leave within a few seconds. Tang Gu nodded. Zhao Prince Consort had also warned her about this, so she did not take it seriously. The 2 of them took the high-definition map and went to compare the positions from a high vantage point. They did not return until late at night. This time, there were 5 people. In addition to Tang Gu and Dong Sun, there were also Ma Hongyu and 2 other experts with good movement skills. Li Fu had led dozens of people to set up an ambush around the sickles. A group of people would attack the experts in the sickles as soon as possible, while the others would prevent any sickles from escaping. "We're done with the ambush. You can take action now." After listening to Li Fu's message through the earpiece, Tang Gu and the others carried the mountainous cable and left the cave. Ma Hongyu was in charge of the overall situation to deal with any emergencies. The cable was more than 1,000 meters long and weighed at least 1,000 kilograms. More importantly, there was a long tail behind it that had to be delivered to the designated position. Fortunately, as they got closer, the mountainous cable shrunk rapidly, and its weight was reduced a lot. "Dong Sun, stop for a moment. There are 2 sickles mating at the position you're going to. Get rid of them first. Don't make too much noise and don't bleed. These things have a very good sense of smell." Dong Sun put the cable aside and turned into a shadow, disappearing into the night. In just a moment, a figure appeared behind 2 sickles that were entangled in the water at the edge of the shore. A black whip was thrown out from his hand and wrapped around the necks of the 2 sickles, quickly dragging them to the shore. After dealing with these 2 sickles, Dong Sun went back to carry the cable and set off again. Number 1 in position. Number 2 in position. Number 3 in position. Tang Gu was carrying the cable and facing the sickle settlement. The others were in the north of the settlement, and she was the only one in the south, so she had to cross over. You guys attack first and attract their attention, Tengu said after reaching her position. Remember, don't fall into the water. Start. Li Fu ordered in the earpiece. More than 20 figures appeared from the darkness. They covered a distance of hundreds of meters in 2 breaths and arrived above the sickle settlement. A huge fire snake appeared in the sky and swooped down, lighting up half of the night sky. Set a small target first, such as 1 second. Remember, bookseller's residence. Chapter 1246. However, when they were dozens of meters away from a simple building, 2 indistinct air waves appeared and instantly blew up the fire snakes. Then, there was a loud sonic boom. The strongest expert from the blade sickle race, whose entire body was red, jumped up from the ground and waved a pair of huge hooks. Dozens of almost invisible air waves went straight for everyone. Don't take it head-on, Li Fu ordered while pointing the iron awl in his hand forward. Boom! An electric ball appeared in the air. Li Fu's body was blasted more than 10 meters away, and the front of the iron awl in his hand turned red. This thing is really strong. Li Fu was speechless. Its speed was also extremely fast. One could only vaguely see the hooks in front of its body tremble slightly before it slashed once. The others were already prepared and retreated from their original positions. They could even feel the suction coming from their sides. This thing completely cut through the air, and the air flowed like water, forming this kind of suction. However, this suction was so strong that an Earthwill expert would probably be sucked in without any resistance. What the hell is this thing talking about? In any case, you can go and die. Someone shouted. Thousands of silver threads shot out from his hand and enveloped the expert like a spider web. Even steel would be cut into countless small pieces in an instant. However, the thousands of silver threads broke one after another before they could even get close. Every time a silver thread broke, the expert's hand trembled and a few drops of blood dripped down. Thousands of silver threads were broken, and his hand was densely covered in blood. 5 fire snakes appeared in the air again and wriggled toward the expert from the blade sickle race. At the same time, 9 arrows were shot in a row. The 9 arrows collided in the air, and finally, 4 arrows were shot from 4 different angles toward the expert. A giant sword slashed down from the sky. A pair of giant golden hammers smashed down one after another like 2 mountains. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of loud noises, the 4 arrows shattered in the air, and the giant sword broke. However, the strongest expert from the blade sickle race could no longer resist and was smashed into the sea by the giant hammers. This thing is really difficult to deal with, especially on land. If we were in the water and lost our agility, it would be impossible to fight with this thing, Li Fu said in a deep voice. After waiting for a few seconds, the expert from the blade sickle race didn't show up again and hid in the sea. After all, with so many experts waiting in the sky, only a fool would come out. The water was his territory. It seems that it's not going to come out. Is Tengu ready? Li Fu asked. At a corner of the coast, Tengu was nailing the ring at the front end of the cable into the sand with a steel awl that was 5 meters long. Number 4 is ready. I've already of people of blade sickle race. Of the electricity of sick, of. Blade. Of. Only a few of them spasmed and jumped to the surface of the water. However, in order to fight the enemy, they were all in the deep part of the water. Before they reached the surface of the water, they were all blackened. Only the strongest of them, the red expert of the blade sickle race, spasmed and jumped out of the water. However, what awaited him were giant swords, stone mountains, and sledgehammers, which smashed him into the water again. Everyone saw a red figure dancing in the blue water. Well, actually, it didn't look so poetic at all. It was more like polio. It wasn't until a minute later that the red body gradually stopped moving. Countless black objects floated on the surface of the sea. There were fish, blade sickles, and some other unknown things. Many people were speechless as they watched from the sky. Such a troublesome alien race expert had died just like that. Everyone suddenly hated the weaklings in the cave, even though they were on the same side now. Tang Ji's expression also changed. If he was in the water, he would probably end up like that. He shuddered at the thought that he would turn into a blackened corpse. Although he had been prepared to die in battle against these aliens, he couldn't die in such an ugly way. Okay, it's over. You can stop on your side. Before Li Fu's voice faded, the surface of the sea, which was jumping with electricity, began to darken, leaving only the smell of burning. Team 2, no aliens escaped, right? Li Fu asked. Not even a ghost, the people on the periphery said unhappily. In that kind of situation, everything was burnt. How could there be anyone alive? Leave a team of people to search the area and then guard the vicinity to prevent any fish from escaping the net. Everyone else, get some rest. We'll clean up here tomorrow. These blade sickles all retreated into the water the moment they were attacked. Naturally, no fish escaped. They were all wiped out under the megavolt attack. The next morning, everyone began to check the place. Although the blade sickles were all dead, there were still a lot of things left. These blade sickles had used some kind of coral to build houses. Although many of them had collapsed, most of them were preserved. They found many stone slabs, which were probably used by the blade sickles to record certain things. However, no one could understand the tadpole-like words on them. Apart from that, the most heartbreaking thing was that the flood dragon had also been burnt. When it was dragged out of the cage, it was at least 10 meters long. It had 2 claws under its abdomen and 2 lumps on its forehead. Other than that, it looked like a giant python. You're right. Even if I die from jumping off a cliff, even if I starve to death, I won't eat these things. The white woman looked at the hundreds of burnt things on the shore and repeated herself. I thought there would be seafood. The leading Caucasian scientist shrugged. I don't know if these things can still be eaten. Flood dragon. What a pity, this thing was originally alive. But even if it's burnt, we should still be able to analyze something. Another Chinese scientist was still thinking about the black lump of flood dragon. This could be said to be the obsession of the Chinese. Their intelligence might be even higher than what we imagined. Look at these pictures, they might be the cultivation methods they practice. And these patterns, they look like herbs and ores. Anyway, there are plenty of these things. This is just a small tribe. I believe there will be a lot of these things along the coast to the south. There's nothing to be regretful about. Next, some of the spoils of war, scrap copper, scrap metal, coral slabs, and some charred corpses, were sent back to Dayo after being frozen. Qiao Zhong led the navy to transport a large number of supplies and was ready to build a new forward operating base here. This place was more suitable for building a base than the other 2 gaps in the boundary wall. At least, the transportation distance was shorter, and the shipping capacity was larger. Logistical supplies were easier, and the surrounding threats were fewer. Chapter 1247. However, my author account is my QQ account. I don't know if I can still log in with my frozen QQ account. If it doesn't update at night, then it means that I can't log in. While the browser is still open, I should quickly publish the chapter that I'm writing. I just tried, but I can't log in with my phone's author assistant. In addition, I have to log in every once in a while, so there's no point in not shutting down the computer. The pretty boy from the Empress's family is a tragedy. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1248. Not many people knew that at the border of the Wall of Two Worlds in the north of Stainless City, a small tribe of sickles had disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the person in charge of a caravan in Stainless City died. Many people thought that it was done by a competitor, but no one noticed that the new person in charge of the caravan was from the White Lotus Society. In other words, some people noticed, but no one cared about it. The White Lotus Society was currently very widespread among the low and middle races, but it hadn't caused any disturbances. In addition, there were very few cults that spanned multiple races, and no one thought that they would be able to cause any trouble. In other words, it wasn't illegal to form a cult among the foreign races. After receiving this news, Renbachien was finally relieved. Next, he could boldly build a new forward operating base and expand another logistics base 500 nautical miles away. As long as he controlled this caravan, he would be able to conceal the fact that the humans had occupied that place for a short period of time. He could also obtain some special products from other races through this caravan. For example, the materials for the Earth Spirit's marching pills were something that Renbachien had been envious of for a long time. Moreover, he didn't know how many treasures there were in the 237 square kilometers of territory occupied by the foreign races. At this time, Renbachien was in his sea of knowledge. An indomitable giant Buddha with a faint smile was standing on a planet. Although the giant Buddha was made of stone, no matter from which angle he looked at it, he always felt that its eyes were looking at him as if it were alive. There was a permanent five-colored brilliance around the giant Buddha's body. The colorful brilliance was like a painting frozen in time, frozen around the giant Buddha. I've finally cultivated it. Next, I have to cut off a piece of my spirit to make it more eye-catching. Renbachien floated in front of the giant Buddha, used his mental cultivation method, and cut off his left arm with his right hand. Oh! Renbachien's body trembled in the air, and his face instantly turned pale. He fell for thousands of meters before stabilizing himself. It really hurts. Renbachien took a few deep breaths. Cutting off one's spirit was much more painful than a physical injury. In other words, he was a fierce man. Anyone else would have fainted. When Renbachien first practiced re-visualization, he died countless times, was cut into pieces, and was burned by the wind and fire countless times. He still felt unbearable pain. If it was anyone else, no matter how strong they were, they would not be able to withstand this blow to their divine soul. After gasping in the air for a long time, Renbachien wiped the non-existent sweat off his forehead, stretched out his finger, and the severed arm in the air turned into a beam of golden light and drilled into the giant Buddha. While paying attention to the changes in the giant Buddha, he controlled his body and regrown his left arm. A strong sense of weakness filled his entire body. Even when he was heavily injured during the 7 days of dual cultivation, he had never felt so weak. There seemed to be something missing in his heart. As time went by, Renbachien gradually felt a connection with that Buddha statue. It wasn't like what he had thought, that he had another body. Instead, it was a mysterious feeling. The giant Buddha seemed to have given birth to a young consciousness. Both of them came from the same bloodline, and there was a closeness of blood being thicker than water. At the same time, they could sense some of each other's feelings, but they could not completely control each other. The lowest level of connection seems to be sufficient. Renbachien nodded. The current situation was exactly what he wanted. He did not want to control this man-made Buddha. He was more afraid that their minds would be connected, and when this Buddha absorbed too many distracting thoughts, it would corrode him instead. Among the predecessors who practiced the ancient scroll of methods, this kind of situation had happened before. At present, the lowest level of connection could be said to be cutting off a part of one's divine soul to form another person. Although the degree of control was very low, it would not be invaded. As for the part of the divine soul that had been cut off, it could only be replenished through long-term practice and some natural treasures. Renbochin came out of his sea of knowledge and first informed Tianjing Basin to transfer some materials to build a Buddha statue. In order to collect the power of will to become a god, the statue also needed some special materials and a special method to build it. Many of the materials were precious and expensive, but they were nothing to Renbochin. With just a few words, a large number of materials and manpower were mobilized. After bidding farewell to the Empress, he went straight to Tianjing Basin. With a plane, the journey didn't take long, but the plane could only reach the entrance of Tianjing Basin. There was a huge magnetic field in Tianjing Basin. In many places, even wireless signals were blocked, and the plane route had to bypass this large area. After recovering Tianjing Basin 20 years ago, this was Renbochin's first time here, and it could be considered a revisit. Renbochin's schedule wasn't arranged too quickly. After all, the Buddha statue hadn't been built yet, so he took this opportunity to inspect various parts of Tianjing Basin and see the current situation. Although he could see it from the reports, it wasn't as clear as seeing it with his own eyes. As soon as he entered the first city, Renbochin noticed a few monks begging for alms in the crowd. Although Renbochin knew that Buddhism was developing well in Tianjing Basin, he was still slightly surprised. What are they begging for? Renbochin asked. Beside him was Jin Kunming, the commander of the rearguard commandery. Although he often traveled around, he knew more about the situation in Tianjing Basin than Renbochin. Those monks said that giving alms to them is fated with Buddha. In any case, I don't really believe them. If your highness doesn't like it, I can get them to clean up these monks in temples, Jin Kunming said. I'm asking about what they are begging for alms. Is it food or property? Renbochin glanced at him. I'll get someone to ask. Jin Kunming realized that he had misunderstood Renbochin's meaning and quickly gave the order. Not long after, someone reported, Your Highness, they are begging for bricks. Oh. Are they going to build a temple? Renbochin immediately understood. He knew more about Buddhism than most people. In that case, don't bother about them and let them be, Renbochin said and suddenly thought of something. How many Buddhists are there in Tianjing Basin now? About 3 million. Tianjing Basin had a population of close to 70 million. 3 million believers was indeed a lot. After the war, the common people had a hard time surviving, which gave Buddhism a lot of room to develop. Buddhism also gave the common people a psychological sustenance and saved the imperial court a lot of trouble. Renbochin toured and patrolled along the way. 20 years had passed, and the damage caused by the war to Tianjing Basin almost didn't leave any traces. People seemed to have forgotten about the war. However, the complexion and mental state of the common people were much better than before. Renbochin still remembered the first time he came here. Even if the people weren't in dire straits, they weren't much better. Several major organizations attacked each other, and the common people were left with numbness on their faces. Now, the faces of the common people were a lot livelier, and they weren't as hungry as before. After all, there were so many high-yielding crops, and the land in Tianjing Basin was also fertile. If there were still people who didn't have enough to eat, Renbochin would investigate the governance here. As for the sects in the underworld, they were relatively rare now. Most of them had been wiped out by the army and turned into ashes. Those who could survive were those who were more obedient at the time. Now, they had connections with the rearguard commandery and had a large number of disciples serving there. During this period, Renbochin also encountered things that made him frown. There were still cases of people oppressing the common people, especially those sects whose disciples served in the rearguard commandery. They had now become a major force in Tianjing Basin and occupied a lot of fertile land. This made Renbochin ponder whether he should start with them. 20 years of peace had also nourished many corrupt officials. Renbochin kept all of this in mind and was ready to clean up the rearguard commandery when he returned. Along the way, it took him a full 20 days to arrive at the Jingxin Temple. That's right, the largest temple built by the little monk here was also called the Jingxin Temple. Renbochin first guarded the outside of the main hall before he stepped inside and looked at the benevolent Buddha statue. The Buddha statue looked a little colorful. Although it had just been built, it looked a little old. Renbochin walked around it and confirmed that there were no problems with it. It was built according to his requirements, and the words and patterns that he wanted to engrave were also engraved. He then stood in front of the Buddha statue and flicked his finger between his eyebrows. A colorful ball flew out from between his eyebrows, drew an arc in the air, and drilled into the body of the Buddha statue. The surface of the Buddha statue suddenly emitted a colorful light. It even shone out of the main hall, causing everyone outside to be amazed. As the colorful light gradually shrank back into the body, Renbochin saw a colorful halo appear behind the head of the Buddha statue. At the same time, the Buddha statue also gave people a feeling of being alive. An immature consciousness transmitted a childlike feeling. Renbochin scanned his sea of knowledge. Although the giant Buddha on the planet was still there, it was much dimmer. That giant Buddha was the link between him and this newborn consciousness. Grow up well, little guy. I hope you can become a true god, Renbochin said softly. After this little guy absorbed an immeasurable amount of power of will, it would become stronger and stronger as time passed. At the same time, it would also be influenced by the power of will. As for what it would become in the end, even Renbochin himself didn't know. He only hoped that it would be a benevolent god. Chapter 1249. Before Renbochin left the Tranquil Temple, he wrote a plaque for it. The words "Deity" and "Buddha" are spiritual. With this plaque and the halo behind the head of the Buddha statue, the Tranquil Temple's reputation would surely spread far and wide. With more devotees, the deity would grow faster. After doing all this, Renbochin asked people to keep an eye on the situation at the Tranquil Temple before returning to the capital. On the way, Renbochin received feedback from the deity's clone. The giant Buddha on the planet was constantly emitting strands of pure power of wish. As this power of wish was emitted, it would be transformed into spiritual power to repair the injuries he suffered when his spirit was split. At the same time, as the power of wish was transformed, Renbochin could vaguely hear voices, but he couldn't hear them clearly. It was as if someone was saying something in a very distant place. This was also the content recorded in the ancient scroll of methods. After splitting the deity's clone, the power of wish returned from the deity's clone would be different depending on the degree of connection between the two. If the degree of connection between the two was high, the power of wish returned would be higher. However, the disadvantage was that he would be contaminated by the distracting thoughts of the power of wish. Since he had the lowest degree of connection, the amount of power of wish returned was smaller, and he would be less contaminated. Therefore, it was a choice between becoming a madman who rapidly improved his strength or slowly cultivating with the power of wish. Renbochin chose the latter. There wasn't much power of wish, but it was easy to transform into spiritual power. Furthermore, there was power of wish every day. Even if he didn't do anything but sleep every day, his spirit would gradually become stronger and his strength would increase. Renbochin felt that he could finally experience the Empress's feeling of being a cheat. I get stronger even when I sleep. What can I do? I'm also very helpless. Cough. Renbochin calculated carefully. Based on the current situation, his spirit would increase by about 5% every month. In other words, in 20 months, his divine soul would double. However, as more people went to the Tranquil Temple to pray and make wishes, this number would also increase. Renbochin had just returned to the capital, and his first order was for the rearguard commandery to spread the news of the Tranquil Temple's wishes being fulfilled throughout Tianjing Basin. He had to shape the tranquil temple into a Buddhist holy land in Tianjing Basin as soon as possible. After issuing the order, Renbochin returned to the palace. When the Empress saw him, she said rather regretfully, "It's a pity that I can't eat it anymore." "What is it?" Renbochin's head was filled with question marks. "The flood dragons we brought back from the blade sickle race were all burnt. I had people cut them open, but there was nothing edible left. I used to want to taste the 2 flood dragons in the Great Xia Dynasty Palace, but I never had the chance. What a pity." Renbochin didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing the Empress's words. "I'm guessing there are quite a lot of them in the outsider's territory. Even if it's not everywhere, it won't be too rare. There will always be a chance. It's been too long. I don't want to wait any longer. Forget it, I'll personally make a trip and catch one of the 2 in Great Xia." It was unknown which nerve in the Empress's brain had been triggered. She actually couldn't wait for even a moment longer. She was extremely mobile, and after leaving a sentence, she disappeared into thin air. Renbochin looked up at the sky for a long time before shaking his head silently. The Empress probably wanted to eat the flood dragon of the Great Xia royal family, but unfortunately, she wasn't strong enough. Although she was strong enough now, she had been busy with the outsiders for the past few years and had forgotten about it. As a result, this idea was evoked, and she immediately took action. This was an undeserved disaster for the Great Xia royal family. My condolences. Now, he could plan how to eat it. He didn't know how big it was. He would cut a section to braise it, steam it, make it into slices of raw dragon, barbecue it, fry it, stew it. Finally, he couldn't forget to leave some for the laboratory. "Your Highness, where's Her Majesty?" Not long after, he met the iron-bespectacled lady, Xianjia. Xianjia now looked slightly older than the Empress. With her strength, time passed very slowly for her. Her youthful beauty hadn't diminished, and she looked a little more mature. Due to the common secret of the electric shock experiment, the 2 of them were more casual and intimate than others. She went to Great Xia. "What's the matter?" The Imperial Kitchen asked about how to deal with the charred corpse of the flood dragon. "Take me to see it." Renbochin was interested. When they arrived at the Imperial Kitchen, Renbochin saw the frozen charred corpse. It was 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket. At this moment, its abdomen had been cut open, and it was charred from the inside out. However, it had 2 lumps on its head, 2 claws under its abdomen, a row of spikes on its back, and a layer of charred scales. Some of its original form could still be seen. Its mouth was longer and wider, and its teeth were different from those of snakes. "This thing doesn't look like a python, but more like a crocodile." Renbochin sized it up. He originally thought that it would look more like a python. "I don't know how strong it is. Since the sickle people spend a lot of effort to capture it, it shouldn't be too weak." Renbochin guessed and instructed, "Leave it here first. I'll get someone to send it to the laboratory. There might be some gains." 3 days passed. Renbochin was still dealing with government affairs after the court session ended when he saw a red figure land at the entrance of the hall with a long object in her hand. "Your Majesty." Renbochin pushed the memorial to the side, got up, and greeted, "Was the journey smooth?" Renbochin looked at the thing in her hand. It was a creature that looked similar to the previous corpse, but the horns on its head were bigger, and it had 3 claws under its abdomen. Its body was 13 to 14 meters long. The Empress slammed the flood dragon to the ground. "Tie it up and get the Imperial Kitchen to find a way to cook it for me." Renbochin's eyes twitched. The body of the flood dragon twitched a few times after being slammed to the ground. "Your Majesty, is this thing still alive?" "It's delicious when it's fresh." The Empress's reason was impeccable. "How strong is it?" Renbochin asked curiously. It's probably between Cardinal Heaven and Kismet Heaven. Ah! Renbochin was slightly surprised. It was stronger than he expected. Although this was a flood dragon from ancient Chinese mythology, Renbochin understood that the so-called legendary creature was just a relatively rare and powerful animal in this world after seeing Qi Shui, a fake Kirin. There was no need to deify it. Furthermore, this was a flood dragon and not a real dragon. After all, its vitality is scarce, and its strength is already beyond my expectations. If it was outside the wall of the two worlds, I'm afraid it wouldn't be weak, the Empress said. That's true. In Great Xia, where vitality is scarce, its strength is enough to show how powerful it is. Renbochin nodded. This thing's ability is quite interesting. It can actually control water to a certain extent, the Empress commented. Renbochin's eyes suddenly lit up. This ability was close to the legendary ability to overturn the clouds and rain. At the very least, it could overturn rivers and seas, right? Perhaps he should think about how to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, snatch this flood dragon from the Empress's mouth, and send it to the laboratory alive. This is mine. Don't even think about it. I'm going to eat it tonight. The Empress seemed to know what Renbochin was thinking. She immediately rolled her eyes and said fiercely, "How many more are there in Great Xia's palace?" Chapter 1250. TSK, the taste isn't bad. The meat is very chewy and fragrant, Renbochin commented with satisfaction as he shaved his teeth. Looking at the table, the Empress and Honeysuckle were still gorging themselves. The Empress was the fastest, and half of the dragon meat went into her stomach. The rest went into Honeysuckle's stomach, and he visibly grew fatter like a balloon. This made Renbochin click his tongue in wonder. Did it store all the primordial qi contained in the flood dragon meat in its body? Honeysuckle's muscles were bulging when he was born because the energy he inherited from the Empress was too abundant, and it was all stored in his body. This ability was similar to that of a camel. It was fun. Renbochin looked at the mother and daughter who were drinking wine on the left and eating meat on the right. This scene. TSK. Unfortunately, he didn't have the strength of the Empress or Honeysuckle's hoarding ability. He felt full without eating much and could only look at them. By the way, the countries on Earth and the eight-armed race have reached an agreement. Next, they will send a team of envoys to the eight-armed race and the first batch of technologists to attack the four-leaf grass planet where the Thunder Barbarians are. They invited you to go, but I rejected them. Why? As you know, I'm quite interested in the eight-armed race. Being able to learn from them will improve my combat ability. The Empress tilted her head slightly. It's too risky. You are our last trump card, whether it's Dayo or Earth. If you take that step, there's no harm in going. Even if you're at the peak of longevity heaven, you're still one realm away from them if you don't take that step. The eight-armed race isn't like the Earth spirit race, and their combat skills are brilliant, Renbochin said. In fact, there was another danger, which was the universe. Traveling in the universe was dangerous everywhere. However, for Renbochin and the Empress, this danger was the least. Renbochin just needed to grasp the time and leave the cooldown for his space travel skill. If something really happened, they would still be in the void after traveling. This was easy to solve since they just needed to wait for help. The eight-armed race was the most dangerous. If they had any ideas, the Empress would be like a lamb walking into a tiger's mouth. The Empress swallowed a mouthful of dragon meat and drank a cup of erguotu before saying, "Agree to their request." No, it's too dangerous. Renbochin immediately refused. He didn't even want to think about it. If anything were to happen to the Empress, it would be too late for regrets. Your Majesty, you are now the human sovereign of the human race. Although you haven't performed the ancestral worship ceremony yet, your status has already been decided. Your Majesty, you are the final trump card of the human race. With your Majesty's talent, as long as you have enough time, you might have the strength to contend against the heavenly lords. I can break through now. All the preparations I made were based on the assumption that your Majesty could contend with the top experts of the other party. Ha! Renbachien was stunned as he tilted his big bald head and looked at the Empress. His eyes said, "You're King kidding me. I can break through now. I've already taken half a step forward, and I've made some progress these days. I think I'll be able to break through in 10 days or at most a month. I can use the experts of the Ba-arm race to familiarize myself with my strength after breaking through." The Empress replied casually as if what she was talking about was a trivial matter. Her gaze didn't even leave the meat in front of her. Renbachien stared at the Empress for a long time before slamming the table and saying, "You still dare to say that you didn't cheat?" He then rubbed his bald head and said, "I'm going to have to live in 2 separate rooms again. You can go to the brothel and look for that, what's her name again? I forgot." The Empress mumbled as her mouth was stuffed with dragon meat. The Empress rarely saw such a scene when she was eating. After all, no matter how delicious something was, it wasn't rare for her. However, this dragon meat was indeed one of the best delicacies in the world. "Shall I go then? If you dare to do something you shouldn't do, I'll beat you to death." Meanwhile, Two Blossom was laughing his head off. "There are still 2 more dragons in the dragon pond of Great Xia. If I ask for another one, will they give it to me?" Renbachien began to consider another problem after eating and drinking. "I want both of them. I'll give you half. The head, tail, and bones are all yours." The Empress waved her hand. It was rather refreshing. The next day, Renbachien returned to Earth and passed on the news. The other party was naturally overjoyed and wasn't dissatisfied at all. One had to know that without the support of this top-notch expert, the envoy wouldn't be as confident in facing those barbaric but powerful extraterrestrial races. From the behavior of the 8-armed race when they first arrived on Earth, it could be seen that no matter how advanced one's technology was, even if one could use it to destroy a city or a country, they would still look down on one. Only experts of the same level could talk to them as equals. This was the case even for the 8-armed race, which was more civilized and easier to deal with. For example, the Thunder Barbarians didn't care about you at all and treated you like a pig or a dog. Before Renbachien rejected them, many people were still thinking about how to get him to agree. Now that he had taken the initiative to change his mind, it couldn't be better. In the next few days, Renbachien also had to arrange matters on Earth, especially leaving a few Cardinal Heaven experts here to prevent any unforeseen events from happening after he left. Half a month later, Renbachien, Hua, and the rest of the envoy group, which included 13 envoys from various countries. They were divided into an ambassador and 12 deputy envoys. This was the problem of having more than one country. Other than that, there were 176 escorts, more than 200 experts, more than 1,500 technicians, and more than 5,800 people from the joint guard teams of various countries. After everyone met, Renbachien and Hua boarded a huge spacecraft that was 3,200 meters long. It was 10 times longer than an aircraft carrier, 700 meters wide, and 260 meters tall. This was also the crystallization of the highest technology of mankind, and it was enough to carry 6,000 people in space for 16 months. As soon as they boarded the spacecraft, Hua let out a cry of joy. The faces of the disciples around him had been filled with shock since the start of the battle. Before being informed by the dojo master, they never thought that they would have the opportunity to board a spacecraft and travel to an extraterrestrial civilization. Although humans had long begun to explore the universe and occasionally had news of it, all of this was too far away from them. Renbochin waved his hand to let these talented disciples move around freely and find their own rooms. Looking at the interior of the spacecraft, there was a bar, a restaurant, and a game hall. In addition, there was a multi-purpose conference room, a liaison office, and so on. The metal floor was covered with a thick carpet, and there were groups of sofas, projectors, and other things in the hall. It had to be said that these two spacecraft were indeed outstanding in terms of enjoyment. In addition to the public facilities, the rooms were divided into 3 classes. Renbochin's room was one of the best. It was about 50 square meters, and there was a projector in the room that allowed him to view the scene outside the spacecraft through various surveillance cameras. There were no portholes. The spacecraft built on Earth never had portholes because the universe was too dangerous, and humans had just started. Compared to various kinds of glass, the special metal shell was safer. At this time, Renbochin sat on the sofa and watched the surveillance footage. As the ground shook violently, the scene began to change rapidly. The Earth was getting further and further away from him until it became an aqua-blue planet that wasn't so round. The first stop was the spaceport near the node, a transit station between the 2 galaxies. Chapter 1251. There seemed to be a passageway in the middle of the node. There was nothing in the middle, and the surroundings were filled with bizarre scenes. The universe, planets, and other things were all distorted into scenes that were beyond human imagination. Many people guessed that these bizarre scenes were the galaxies between the solar system and the Horned Dragon galaxy. Unfortunately, they couldn't find another exit even after sending out tens of thousands of detectors. The detectors would disintegrate upon contact with the distorted scenes and be buried in the dust of the universe. After a long time, a different scene finally appeared at the end of the passageway. It was a small starry sky. The spacecraft was spat out of this exit as if it was a foreign object that had mistakenly entered a mouth. What appeared in front of everyone was a completely unfamiliar starry sky. Renbochin woke up, opened his eyes, and opened the sleeping cabin door in front of him. "Are we here?" Renbochin looked at the indicator light beside him, which had turned green. "We're finally here." Renbochin stretched his back, and his joints crackled. It only took 5 days to travel from Earth to the spaceport in front of the node, but it would take 1 month to pass through the node. He went to the wine cabinet, took out a bottle of red wine, and poured himself a glass. He listened to the broadcast informing everyone to go to the dining hall and eat a small amount of food to recover their bodily functions. He sat quietly on the sofa and turned on the projector. "Dad!" Honeysuckle rushed in from outside, snatched the red wine from Renbochin's hand, and began to drink it. "Ha!" He took a deep breath, wiped his mouth, and jumped onto the sofa to accompany Renbochin to watch the scene on the projector. "This starry sky is very beautiful, even more beautiful than what we saw in the solar system," Honeysuckle exclaimed with stars in his eyes. An extremely beautiful nebula was projected on the screen. It was so brilliant that it was like the greatest miracle in the universe. In another direction, 2 resplendent galaxies could be seen. "Dad, do you think this is the same universe as the solar system? Have we transmigrated?" Honeysuckle suddenly had a brainstorm. In fact, many people on Earth had come up with this theory. After all, the cosmological constants here were slightly different from those in the solar system. Renbochin glanced at this silly child. "I don't know if others are wearing it, but don't you know if you are?" The projection changed several directions and finally saw a few planets in the distant starry sky. "It doesn't look like a horned dragon at all." Honeysuckle was a little disappointed. "Forget it, I'll go to the restaurant to see if there's anything delicious." "Dad, do you want some congee with pork and century eggs? Remember to use cuckoo eggs to make century eggs and the meat of a fortune heaven hei langjun. "I have them stored in the freezer in the kitchen," Renbochin said. "Oh." Honeysuckle stood still and pondered for a while. His eyes widened. Why didn't I know? Are you going to eat it all for yourself? You didn't ask. Renbochin spread his hands and pointed at Lu Hua. Get rid of those muscles on your body first. Even this set of clothes can't block your power. Honeysuckle looked down at himself. Underneath the clothes, his shoulders and waist were bulging with muscles. Her small face immediately turned pale. That flood dragon meat is too delicious. Then, he clenched his teeth and waved his fists. In another half a month, I will definitely be able to lose weight. Then you'll have to take out the bag of flood dragon jerky that you've been hiding. Mine. It's all mine. Even if I gain another 50 kilograms, I won't hand it over. Honeysuckle swore through gritted teeth. Renbochin spread his hands. I'm not the fat one anyway. He looked at Honeysuckle, who left angrily, and glanced at his thigh-thick arms. Oh, I'm already so fat. No, I should be strong. Men look better when they're strong. Even if I settle for the next best thing, I look better when I'm fat. How can you call yourself a man if you're as thin as an electric pole? Decades ago, due to the cultivation of all the people on Earth, all the celebrities had already become 8 feet tall and had a waist circumference of 8 feet. However, it was said that there was a return to the old ways in the past 2 years. This wasn't a good trend. After a month, they finally arrived at Moros, the home planet of the 8-armed race. They could see planet 4-leaf grass on the other side of the projection. It's time. We will land at the designated location in 3 hours. Is that person really here? 12 pairs of eyes looked at Ambassador Wu Yushua. It was said that the Empress in red, who had stirred up a sea of blood on the American flag, was on this ship as backup for this diplomatic mission. However, no one had seen her since they boarded the ship. Now that they are here, shouldn't they come out and show themselves? With this in mind, it will be easier for us to do our work in the future. Wu Yushua was also confident in the eyes of the crowd. As the ambassador this time, he knew some things. However, how would he know if the Empress was here or not? Mr. Ren, please go to the multi-purpose conference room with Madam Qi. We will land in 3 hours, and we would like to seek your opinion on some matters regarding the diplomatic mission. Wu Yushua pressed the button and stood to the side. I can't control these two anyway. Even if the Empress doesn't show herself, there's nothing I can do. It's useless for you to look at me. Staring at each other. Do you want to make your eyes look big? Do you really think that my eyes are small? Fortunately, the awkward atmosphere in the conference room didn't last long. The automatic doors opened, and a man and a woman walked in. Everyone was familiar with the man. His arms were thicker than a human's thighs, and he was bald. He looked like a bandit. However, compared to the cold and arrogant red-clothed woman beside him, he was just a rookie. Wu Yushua heaved a sigh of relief. She had finally shown herself. The others were also relieved. Even the ambassador of the American flag felt the same way. In any case, everyone was now standing on the same side and representing humanity. 3 hours later. In a huge city on a plain in the King's City, countless people looked up at the sky with their mouths wide open. They were much more frightened than the citizens of Gotham when they saw the alien invasion. After all, even though the citizens of Gotham were simple, they were all very knowledgeable. These people from the 8-armed race were really shocked. They saw a black dot getting bigger and bigger until it stopped 2,000 meters above the ground. Everyone could clearly see that it was actually a metal structure, a coffin. The coffin was so big that one could imagine how huge the owner of the coffin was. The higher-ups of the 8-armed race immediately knew what was going on when they discovered the spacecraft. The humans were here. They immediately issued a notice to appease the people and sent a team to welcome them. From the position, the spacecraft had landed on a plain outside the city. The leader of the team, the second ritual, was rather curious. When the third ritual returned from Earth, he couldn't stop marveling at how magical Earth was. It seemed that there were good things everywhere, and even ordinary things had extremely magical effects. For example, a box that could project images in the air. For example, a bracelet or badge that could transmit sound from 1,000 miles away. In her words, the so-called human planet was like the mother goddess's domain, full of magnificent miracles. She was full of anticipation for those magical human creations. Chapter 1252. When the second discipline of the octopus race arrived outside the city, he was first attracted by the 3,000-meter-long spaceship. The protruding alloy plates, the diamond-shaped edges, and the battleship cannons on it were all expressing the beauty of technology. It would be even better if he could ignore the coffin-like overall shape. Then, the bottom of the spaceship opened, and 2 elevators descended at the same time. Dozens of soldiers quickly stood around it. Then, a lady in red attracted the second ceremony's attention. This strength. Is this the human expert that the third ceremony mentioned? However, this feeling was very familiar, similar to the feeling when he saw the high priest and the queen. This is the ancestral state. Previously, the third ceremony mentioned that the other party had reached the peak of the supreme realm and was one step away from the ancestral state. How long has it been? The other party has already taken this step. The second ceremony thought to himself as he led his men to welcome them. Naturally, the ambassador of this mixed team was in charge of sending out a batch of high-tech gifts. This time, the humans opened the way with all kinds of gifts since these things weren't worth much on Earth. Most of the things they brought were projectors and solar panels. The projectors also contained a large number of movies translated into the language of the Eight Arms race. They mainly focused on science fiction like Marvel, fantasy, and science movies. Humans finally understood one thing. When dealing with these powerful alien races, bragging might be more effective than exchanging benefits. At the very least, it would make them more fearful. As for the strength and background of the humans on Earth, the other people of the Eight Arms race didn't know because the Empress was protecting them. When Renbochin entered the city, he observed the situation, the living conditions of the people, their mental state, and the number of experts in the Eight Arms race. Renbochin knew that the Eight Arms race had a matriarchal structure. Females were more powerful and had greater potential, so most of the experts were female. However, he discovered the miserable state of the Eight Arms race men when he entered the city. They were at the bottom of society, wearing the dirtiest and worn-out clothes, dull eyes, and almost all 4 arms. Occasionally, there were 2 6-armed men who wore more exquisite clothes. However, they still had to lower their heads and stand to the side when encountering men of the same level as them, waiting for them to pass first. From this, it could be seen that the men of the Eight Arms race had almost no social status. In addition, the construction standards of the Eight Arms race were pretty good. Renbochin even saw a lot of 5-story pavilions. As for other aspects, they were probably at the level of the Tang and Song dynasties. No matter which race it was, their palaces were all built with gold and jade, displaying the highest level of technology of their race. The Ba-Arm race was no different. He only saw the queen of the octopus race when he arrived at the palace hall. There were 5 females of the Ba by race sitting at the head of the table. One of them had 8 arms that glowed like white jade. She wore a strange long robe and a golden crown. The other 4 on either side also had 8 arms, and their arms had a golden luster of varying intensities. Below them sat 8 arms and 6 arms. Ah, Wang Feng, I've brought him. The second shaman folded his 8 arms in front of his chest, saluted, and sat to the side. Greetings, Queen of the Octopus race. We're from Earth, and we're here to sign an alliance agreement with your race." The ambassador bowed slightly. Renbochin noticed that the Empress's body was tense and her expression was solemn. The 5 people on top and the one on the left are all experts from the immortal heaven. The Empress's voice was transmitted into his ears. This news caused Renbochin to raise an eyebrow. There were indeed many experts in the Ba Bai race. He then listened to Wang Feng's introduction. On the left and right were King Guangpei, King Jiwu, King Jiutang, and King Rongchang. The one on the left was the high priest of the Ba Bai race. This made Renbochin feel a little enlightened, and he relaxed a little. It turned out that the kings of the other countries had been invited, and there weren't just 6 experts from the immortal heaven here. These 2 concepts were completely different. If one country alone had 6 experts from the immortal heaven, then the 4 countries would have at least 20. This was terrifying. "Before everyone is seated, this king would like to ask a question," King Feng suddenly said. "Please speak." Wang Feng looked at someone in the crowd and asked, "Are you willing to be an ally of the Ba Bai race?" "She was talking about you, not you guys." Everyone present was shocked and turned to look at Wang Feng's gaze, only to see the Empress in red standing there. "Wang Feng, may I ask?" Wu Yushua hurriedly asked. Everyone's mind was filled with doubts. The Empress understood what he meant and was also a little puzzled. She slowly said, "What do you mean by talking about me alone? Compared to them, I'm more willing to believe in you, an expert on the same level as us. Experts at the reversion stage won't lie, and crafty people won't be able to cultivate to the reversion stage. Therefore, I have more confidence in the future of our 2 races by forming an alliance with you." The Empress chuckled. Her aura changed, and she raised her chin proudly. "That's right. At our level, even if we're enemies, we'll be upright." "I agree. Although I'm not in charge of Earth, I'll guarantee your interests. Correspondingly, you have to do what you promised us." "Of course." Wang Feng chuckled. Everyone from the Ba Bai race smiled to express their joy. Everyone on Earth was dumbfounded. Even Renbochin didn't understand what was going on with this sudden change. He only vaguely sensed that there seemed to be some conditions to reach the immortal stage, so the experts who reached this stage agreed with each other more. From the looks of it, this seemed to be a good thing. Wu Yushua also guessed a thing or two, and his eyes were filled with joy. As for the people sent by the other countries, their thoughts were more inexplicable. Envy, jealousy, bitterness, and so on. If only our country had such an expert, of course, that was impossible. Even excluding the Empress and Renbochin, China was the strongest nation in terms of martial arts, followed by other East Asian countries like Japan, which far surpassed the Western countries in terms of martial arts. In that case, I can tell you one thing. Someone wants us to kill you, and in return, they will pay us a batch of technology as compensation. After Wang Feng casually finished speaking, the Empress's face turned frosty, and she almost exploded. Not only her, but everyone else was also about to explode. What's going on? Pay us a batch of technology as compensation. An Earthling. Hire the Ba Bai race to kill the Empress. Renbochin's face turned ashen, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness. The others looked at each other in dismay. Wang Feng, is this true? Wu Yushua's face turned ugly, and his chest heaved up and down. He was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He kept guessing who was so daring. This couldn't be described as daring anymore, it was worse than livestock. Who was the Empress? She was the only expert on Earth, and she was the reason why the human race and the martial arts experts interacted as equals. No matter how great the hatred was, it should be put aside in the face of human etiquette. Now, someone actually hired a foreign race to kill the strongest expert of their own race. This was even when the two sides were in contact and negotiating, preparing to send troops to attack, occupy, and develop another planet. This could already be considered a traitor. You can ask Sanji about this. Wang Feng nodded at the people below. Sanji got up and nodded at everyone. Someone from your side did make such a promise. His name is... Chapter 1253. Sanji thought for a moment before recalling the name. His name is Matthew Perry. He promised us that as long as we kill her, they will give us more technological information in private as a reward. Then, he said with disdain, I hate people like him. He would betray his own race and ally with someone like him. We can't believe it. Obviously, she's the better choice. A powerful individual who has reached the limit of their abilities would not put too much thought into conspiracies and schemes. They are more trustworthy. Everyone slowly turned to look at one person in the crowd. It was the ambassador of the United States. The ambassador's face turned pale. No, that's impossible. I don't know anything about this. Maybe it's just someone with the same name. Maybe I've remembered wrongly. The ambassador said quickly. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. When the octopus race ambassador went to Earth, only the top officials of each country could come into contact with her, and among them, there was only Matthew Perry. Esteemed Sanji of the octopus race, may I ask who this Matthew Perry is? Wu Yushua asked. I can't remember, but he likes to pinch his nose. Sanji replied casually. Everyone was now sure that the man was the Secretary of State of the United States, Matthew Perry. That guy had a persistent rhinitis and would carry a handkerchief with him to pinch his nose no matter where he was. What a disgrace to mankind. The ambassador of the Empire of the Unsetting Sun was the first to draw a line. I can't believe someone would do something like that. Even thinking about it is a disgrace to mankind. The second was the gall rooster. Although the American government has done many stupid things, it's hard to believe that they would be this stupid. Japan had been following China ever since the rise of martial arts, and their relationship in recent years had been quite good. Their stupidity knows no bounds. The ambassadors all spoke one after another. No one dared to stand on the American side. Moreover, the ambassadors all felt that the Americans were too stupid. How stupid did they have to be to come up with such an idea? I'll write a report on this when I get back, Wu Yushua said with a dark expression. The American ambassador, on the other hand, was at a loss as if he had just been fished out of water. When everyone finished speaking, he said with an expression that was uglier than crying, I don't care if you believe me or not, I know nothing about this. If I can make it back alive, I will mobilize the Musk family and our allies to retaliate against them. I will also find out who is behind this. I believe that the idiot Matthew Perry is not the only one behind this. When Renbachchen saw Wu Yushua looking over, he pondered for a moment and said to Howard Musk, You have fought for a chance to live for the time being. I want all the people behind him. If there is one less, you and your family will pay for it. Then, he said with a chilling tone, I'd rather kill 1,000 wrongly than let one go. Howard Musk almost fell to the ground when he heard that, feeling as if all the strength in his body had disappeared without a trace. Renbachchen's words indicated that there would be a reign of terror as soon as they returned. But this time, no one pitied the Americans. Even the people of the Empire of the Unsetting Sun and the Gallus Rooster, who had always been on the same side as the United States, were the same. The Americans were too stupid and too much of a bastard. We will report this matter back. If there is a need, we will provide all the help we can, everyone promised. Renbachchen was still a little scared when he sat down at the table. If the Empress hadn't reached the ancestral level, the 8-armed race might have really done this. According to King Feng, only those who had reached this level would be recognized by them. If that was the case, it would be too dangerous this time. However, on second thought, if the Empress hadn't reached the ancestral level, he wouldn't have agreed either. Just like before they set off, he had rejected them. He felt much better when he thought about it this way. However, this incident still made him vigilant. He also had a deep hatred for certain people. Even exterminating their entire race wouldn't be enough to resolve this hatred. After calming himself down, everything went smoothly. After the rage subsided, the Empress ate even more. Renbochin watched the dance of the 8-armed race. Even one of them danced like the 1,000-armed Guanyin. The only regret was that the 8-armed race didn't have the habit of stripping like the Aboriginals after drinking. In the following days, the diplomatic mission and the 8-armed race carried out their final negotiations. Renbochin accompanied the Empress to wander around the capital city and enjoy the scenery of the foreign planet. During this period, there was a small interlude. After all, both of them had 2 arms. As long as the 8-armed race was of age, even a male would have 4 arms. As a result, the 2 disabled people attracted a lot of attention. It was all thanks to the people sent by King Feng. In addition, they watched the Empress fight with others. King Jiutang and King Rongchang were both at the beginning of the immortal realm. At first, the Empress was at a disadvantage, but she improved rapidly during the fights. After a month, she was on par with these 2 kings. It had to be said that the Empress was cheating again. Please use this. This is a bloodstone that can quickly restore your strength. King Feng asked me to send it over. A servant girl from the 8-armed race brought over a plate of translucent crystals of various sizes with turbid floccules inside. A bloodstone. Renbochin curiously picked up a piece and squinted to feel it. It's very similar to a source stone. Renbochin said. The Empress played with it in her hand and nodded. Indeed, but it has a lot of impurities and isn't as pure as a source stone. The speed at which it emits energy is also much slower. Of course, source stones aren't naturally produced minerals anymore. They have all gone through secondary processing and solidification. Renbochin shook his head. I don't know about the production of this thing. If it's high, we might be able to do business with them. Renbochin immediately went to the 8-armed race to ask about it, and the news he received made him quite happy. This item was not rare here. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi on the 8-armed race's home planet was not low to begin with, enough for daily cultivation. This kind of blood power stone released Yuan Qi slowly, so many rich families even used this kind of blood power stone to build cultivation rooms. This was good news. The speed of mining raw stones at the border between the 2 worlds was very slow. If they could purchase this stone in large quantities, the production of source stones would increase greatly in the future. Moreover, source stones were definitely a hard currency. Even if they were sold within Dayo, they could still earn a lot of money and use it to increase military expenditures. In addition, Earth might not have noticed this type of bloodstone yet, or perhaps they hadn't paid enough attention to it. One had to know that source stones could be mixed with fuel, explosives, and even some metals to change the structure of objects or increase the characteristics of objects. It could be said to be an important resource. Mastering a bloodstone would give Renbochin the upper hand in the future interstellar era. If he could exclusively trade this type of bloodstone, there would naturally be a lot of benefits. At the very least, he wouldn't have to sell it to those bastards. Let them play with their eggs. Before that, he had to first think about what he could trade with the 8-armed race. In terms of technology, he couldn't compare to Earth, and the exchange of resources between the 2 worlds. He still needed to bring a large number of aboriginals to fill the territory that he was about to obtain on the 4-leaf clover planet. What was light, didn't take up much space, and was of great value to the 8-armed race. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Chapter 1254. Your Highness, after testing the bloodstone that you brought back, we found that the flocks in it aren't impurities but liquefied elemental energy with a very high concentration. The crystals on the outside are impurities, including an element that has never been seen before. Where did Your Highness get it from? How's the quantity? The person in charge of the laboratory found Renbachien and asked happily. Previously, they had been mining ternary silicon sulfide from the wall between the two worlds. It wasn't easy to mine, the process was troublesome, and the quantity wasn't enough. Furthermore, it evaporated too quickly, so the laboratory was often out of stock. This newly discovered bloodstone could release elemental energy slowly and was more suitable for experiments than crystals. The concentration of liquefied elemental energy was also extremely high, at least slightly higher than that of crystals. Therefore, after analyzing the function of the bloodstone, the laboratory immediately treated it as a treasure. Give me the report. Renbachien took the report and glanced at it. He could understand some of the data. After all, he had copied so many books in his sea of knowledge and covered a wide range that few people could match. He also remembered a lot of things during the copying process. Even if he couldn't be a scientist, he could still be an expert. After reading it, Renbachien's eyes lit up. How many crystals can 1 kilogram of this ore produce? If it's of this quality, it can produce 3 grade 1 crystals, 10 grade 2 crystals, 389 grade 5 crystals. This was good stuff. The problem now was what to use in exchange. What he could take out now were some of the specialties of Zixiao such as animals, plants, and medicines. If he wanted to trade in large quantities for a long time, he couldn't use items that were too rare. What else? What else was there? Renbachien thought for a long time and realized that there were still some things that he didn't know about Earth and the eight-armed race. Some branches of technology developed based on elemental energy. After all, Deo lacked some unique products from Earth and couldn't completely copy them. After so many years, they had developed some technology with Deo's characteristics. Although it wasn't as advanced as Earth's technology and was even more backward, it was more suitable for the eight-armed race. After all, the situation of the eight-armed race was similar to that of Deo. As Earth gradually came into contact with elemental energy and gained a deeper understanding of it, their progress would far surpass Renbachien. He also had a laboratory on Earth. After so many years, the laboratory of the New World Company was second to none on Earth and had invested in many laboratories and industrial projects. He should be able to do this business before Earth developed technology that surpassed his. At this thought, Renbachien had confidence in completing the transaction. After all, he understood the situation and thoughts of the octopus race far better than other Earthlings. The Aboriginals were the best template. Without having lived among such a race before, it was difficult to accurately grasp the lifeline based on the speculations of those experts on Earth. Later on, Renbachien got someone to compile a list of technologies that utilized vitality and selected those that could be traded, especially those that didn't have high technical content and weren't valued by Earth. However, they were very important. One day later, Renbachien brought her to Earth, race, queen, and Earth. King. Earth, King Feng Earth King Year, Earth. From. And, Earth, he, it. Star King a man King Earth, young King, star, King race. That's good. Earth, King, and King. Race, King have stone said were. King Earth are stone. I'll have to trouble you then. If there's a need, I'll let you know. The Empress didn't regard herself as an outsider, but this kind of frankness was exactly what King Feng liked. Powerhouses who had reached this stage hated things that were roundabout the most. I'm here today because I have a deal to discuss with you, the Empress said and looked at Renbachien. King Feng frowned. The status of males in the octopus tribe was very low. But these days, she also knew the identity of these two people, so she was able to listen patiently. We once helped a planet with a technological level similar to yours reach a higher level. I have a list of technologies in my hands that should be of great help to you. These are things that no one else can give you. It's not that they're hiding it, but it's because they haven't come into contact with it and don't know much about it. A Wang Feng looked at the Empress and saw her nod her head. The smile on his face became even wider. You're not together. Together, but I'm exposed to more things than they are. For example, the planet with a technological level similar to yours is something they don't understand, Renbochin said. The technologies that I can provide you are related to the development and partial utilization of the power in the blood power stone. We call it vitality, and its characteristics are. Renbochin spoke with fervor and assurance. Renbochin spoke with fervor and assurance. He explained Dayo's understanding of the characteristics of vitality and briefly talked about the results of the use of vitality. As expected, this piqued King Feng's interest. After all, the blood power stone wasn't that valuable to the octopus tribe. Exchanging some very ordinary things for valuable technologies was a very worthwhile deal for the octopus tribe. Moreover, after obtaining these technologies, they would be able to use the blood power stone to a higher level, which was equivalent to turning waste into treasure. The contract was signed very quickly. After inquiring and finding out that Earth really didn't have any research on the blood power stone, it only took 3 days to complete an exclusive licensing deal that would last for 15 years. For example, the octopus tribe would provide Renbochin with the first batch of 300,000 tons of blood power stone every year, followed by 80,000 tons every year for a total of 1.5 million tons over 16 years. This was to be used in exchange for more than 170 types of vitality utilization technologies in Renbochin's hands. In addition, there would be an additional 100 technologies in the next 16 years. In addition, from the second year onward, 150,000 tons of blood power stone would be sold to Earth every year, and Renbochin would have the exclusive right to sell them. It had to be said that the Empress played at least half of the role in signing this agreement. In fact, this was both a trade and a return of the peach. In addition to the technologies, the Empress would also repay him. After signing the agreement, Renbochin almost wanted to celebrate with the Empress. Fortunately, his rationality told him that staying alive was more important. Even though it was only 100,000 tons per year, it would be 1.5 million tons over 16 years, and 150,000 tons per year, which would be a total of 2.25 million tons. However, these things weren't cabbages, they were crystals. 1 kilogram of blood power stone could be used to produce 3 top-grade crystals. These crystals could be piled up to form a group of experts, not to mention that the laboratory could be used as much as it wanted. The Empress and the others would be able to fill their houses with crystals in places rich with vitality outside the wall of the two worlds. Their cultivation speed would probably skyrocket. In addition, Renbochin also wanted to use the blood power stone to build a hall for his cultivation. Well, the hall was too big, and his secret room was fine too. While the Earth diplomatic mission was surveying the terrain and choosing the location of the bilateral trade city, Renbochin spent a month bringing over a group of sword masters and aboriginal winged cavalry warriors. Among them were 2 experts from Longevity Heaven. The former were the first batch of personnel to set up the laboratory here, while the latter were used to guard his warehouse in the trade city. After conquering the 4-leaf clover planet, he would have his own territory. Faced with the sudden appearance of a group of burly and ferocious-looking bears, the Earth diplomatic mission was at a loss. Only Wu Yushuo looked pensive. It was obvious that he knew something that was circulating among the higher-ups. However, he still didn't understand what Renbochin was going to do. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Remember, book house. Chapter 1255. Your Majesty, a round trip from here to Earth will take 7 months. Every month, I can bring back 70 Aboriginals or 120 Jing tribe and people from the Yun Nation. Each trip consisted of 6 Aboriginals and 6 women. Each Kismet heaven-winged cavalry warrior weighed only 250 kilograms, while the women weighed about 50 kilograms. This was a very simple math problem. 7 months on Earth could bring back nearly 500 Aboriginals or more than 800 Jing tribe members. 1 year later, the number might even increase by half. This would be very beneficial to the development of the 4-leaf clover planet in the future. After all, the country could rely on immigrants, but he could only use robots or hired people. It was better to use the Aboriginals and Jing tribe members instead. Although they ate more, their wages were low, they had few demands, were loyal, and were strong. If they lost the war with the foreign races in the future, these people could also be used as seeds. This was also a way out. This was official business, as well as official business. Compared to returning to Earth, the benefits of staying here were greater. As for those damned bastards, as long as 2 disciples brought the news back to the Martial Arts Center, the experts left on Earth would naturally let them know what it meant to have weeds grow on one's grave when the wildfire never burns. Renbochin felt that something was wrong. However, it didn't matter. In any case, that was what it meant. Otherwise, what was the purpose of leaving a longevity heaven expert and many cardinal heaven experts on Earth? Wasn't it just to quell trouble when there was a situation? Go back to Earth and kill. The Empress was simple and direct. To her, nothing was more important than making her feel carefree. Was there a need to hesitate? If it was 7 or 70 years later, the Empress would still consider whether to take revenge personally. There was no need to consider 7 months at all. I also think that killing is more important. The most important thing is to kill those who want to frame me. Renbochin's tone changed, and he agreed with her. The scene changed. More than 2 months later, Renbochin opened his eyes again and opened the hibernation chamber. He turned on the projector and saw that in the pitch-black starry sky, a huge cross-shaped spaceport with a ring outside could be seen in the distance. Countless lights lit up the spaceport, and spaceships entered it from time to time. This was the distribution center for supplies from Earth to the Horned Dragon Galaxy. A large number of supplies had been gathered here to provide logistics for the upcoming expedition. I'm back. Renbochin stretched lazily, pushed open the door, and found Howard Musk. Do you have any encrypted communication devices that can contact our people on Earth? I'm sorry. Currently, only each country has its own encrypted communication system. I have to at least reach the moon before I can contact my family, Howard Musk said apologetically. Return to Earth. I'll give you 3 days. Remember, I want all the masterminds behind the scenes. In the future, if I find out which one is missing, I will use you to replace it. Renbochin's tone was calm, but Howard Musk's hair stood on end. He knew that the other party would do as he said. Please rest assured. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Howard Musk placed one hand on his chest and bowed. When he stood up again, his face was filled with killing intent. Even if the other party didn't say anything, he wouldn't let those bastards off. And that bastard who encouraged him to fight for this position. When the spaceship arrived at the space station, countless radio waves began to transmit in the solar system. Back in the Horned Dragon Galaxy, there was only one public information channel. Everyone had a tacit understanding not to mention this matter in the public channel. However, when they arrived at the space station, messages were sent back to Earth. China. It seems like there's going to be a big commotion again. An old man frowned after recovering from his shock. So be it. If it were something else, there might be room for discussion. If it were me, I wouldn't let this matter rest either. Let them be. Some people are reaping what they sow. Another old man chuckled and closed his eyes to rest after speaking in a rocking chair. Another middle-aged man pushed the rocking chair back and forth. The rising sun city. The queen, who was now in her 50s, was sitting in her room. After receiving the news, she stood in front of the window in a daze. That night more than 20 years ago reappeared in her mind. Some people don't learn from their mistakes and always want to provoke people they shouldn't provoke. Contact Mr. Prime Minister. End the ongoing talks. Those people won't be in the mood to care about what we are going to talk about. Germany and Italy, stop the joint military exercise between NATO and the United States and withdraw immediately. Fighting nation, transfer the Northern Fleet to the Bering Strait. Explain. There's no need to explain. Let them condemn us. As long as we can cause trouble for the United States, we will do it. Japan, stop all commercial cooperation with the United States. Keep your distance from them. Did something happen to the Southern Dynasty? Oh, the Southern Dynasty people didn't know anything. Almost at the same time, all the major countries in the world stopped all ongoing talks with the United States, cancelled all visits, and even the military exercises that had already been gathered together were withdrawn in advance. The whole world was in an uproar. They had no idea what was going on. It was as if overnight, the second largest country in the world had become the target of public criticism and the enemy of the whole world. We were isolated. Countless Americans were filled with indignation after the shock. But how did things become like this? Countless experts and scholars appeared on the internet and analyzed the situation in the past 2 days. However, no matter how they analyzed, they couldn't find the reason. What? She's not dead. Why? Why didn't those alien bastards keep their word? Even the Gallic roosters drew a line with us. Alright, you don't need to tell me about this. Why? I don't care, I don't King care about anything now. Matthew Perry's eyes were red as he vented crazily in the office. Yes, when he found out that the woman wasn't dead and stepped on the spaceship, he knew he was dead. What United States, what identity, what wealth, what family, what reputation, none of it mattered anymore. He didn't understand why those damn 8-armed alien bastards had changed their minds. Weren't those aliens very powerful? After a long time, Matthew Perry slumped on the chair with a dull look in his eyes. After a long time, he came back to his senses and opened his address book. That woman is back. Those bastards changed their minds. We're dead. Not us, it's you. You're the one who did this, have you forgotten? Don't worry, your family will live a good life, your family will be glorious. That's my promise. F***ck, you bastard. Matthew Perry was filled with anger as he smashed the communicator. In a manor in the United States, a middle-aged man said to the person beside him, Matthew's mission is over. Don't give him a chance to speak. Clean up all the clues. After giving the order, the middle-aged man remembered the conversation he had with his father more than 20 years ago. The Earth doesn't need a Superman, and we don't need a Superman who is beyond our control and can easily take our lives. We will be above everyone and control everything because we are the Mellon family. She is very powerful, but she is only a human, not a god. As long as there is a small opportunity, we can achieve our goal. We have enough patience, we have enough opportunities, we have enough means and resources to do everything we want to do. We are the Mellon family. The middle-aged man smiled. Failed. No, this is not important. Failure is only temporary, and we will succeed eventually. Everyone who likes The Pretty Boy from the Empress's Family, please bookmark. The Pretty Boy from the Empress's Family is a hot topic. Chapter 1256. It feels much better to be on the ground. I don't feel at ease in the sky. I hate spacecraft. Renbocchen heaved a sigh of relief when he got off the spacecraft. Hua and the Empress had been sent back to Deo by him. Renbocchen consciously stood at the back of the welcoming party. The diplomatic mission was now the main character. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he noticed that the officials of the United States had grim expressions on their faces. Amidst the joyous and celebratory expressions, he stood out from the crowd. However, Renbocchen wasn't able to leave and was instead invited to a room. Mr. Ren. Every time I see you, I feel that I'm getting old, the old man on the screen lamented. Therefore, you probably don't like to see me. You must be joking. The old man chuckled. The two chatted for a while before the old man said, I heard about this matter. From a personal point of view, I understand what you are going to do. Of course, the nation is also standing behind you. Renbocchen understood. In fact, he never thought that someone would stand in his way. Both emotionally and logically, he was on the side of reason. I only hope that it won't be as spectacular as the last time. That time, I was shocked and worried a lot. This time, the scene will be smaller. After all, peace is the main theme of the world now. Don't worry. We are professionals. Renbocchen saw that the other party was so understanding and naturally gave him face. However, the old man's expression was a little strange. That's right, we are professionals. The only thing he regretted was that Matthew Perry was dead, and he couldn't kill him with his own hands. It was said that he committed suicide to escape punishment, but only idiots would believe that. This time, Renbocchen was going to dig out the bastard behind this, stuff his head into his ass, and suffocate him to death. It was very fitting for the way those bastards died. After returning to Wuji City to rest for a few days, he received news from Howard Musk. The Mellon family and the Dugan family. Are you sure it's them? Are there any missing people? Renbocchen sat on the sofa and looked at the list as he asked in a dull and dignified voice. Of course, this isn't only a betrayal to you, but also a disgrace to me. Howard Musk sat behind the table behind the projection with a serious expression. They cleaned up everything, even Matthew Perry's house, and believed that there was nothing in Matthew Perry's personal safe at the bank that he needed. Unfortunately, they did everything, but Matthew Perry left a clue somewhere else, and we found it. I've sent you the identities and addresses of all the people from these two families, as well as some other people involved in this matter. And we will send you a new one every 12 hours. I got it. I will remember what you did this time. Renbocchen nodded. He felt that he really needed to keep two acquaintances in the United States. For example, this matter would be very useful. Thank you for your tolerance, Your Excellency. Also, the Musk family is honored to be remembered by Your Excellency. Howard Musk stood up and bowed. He was somewhat excited. He did not expect to receive such a pleasant surprise. It would be beneficial for the Musk family if they could establish a relationship with him. Even in the interstellar era, the influence of this person and the power he represented couldn't be underestimated. He wasn't a fool like the Mellon family or the Dugan family. A few days later, Renbocchen and the Empress appeared in Wuji City. The Empress then dragged Renbocchen into the air and walked step by step toward the other side of the ocean. This scene wasn't hidden from anyone. As the most famous couple on Earth, almost all the countries knew about their movements in an instant. There were many people gloating over their misfortune. There were also many people who had been paying attention and wanted to evaluate their combat strength. The only one who wasn't calm was the United States, which was like an ant in a pan of oil. This time, we have to keep our movements low. Renbocchen was carried, by the Empress. Renbocchen was being supported by the Empress and said seriously. I haven't made a move yet, the Empress replied faintly. Well, when we make our move, let's be quiet and not cause an uproar. Renbachien thought about it and felt that there was no problem. Although the Empress walked step by step and didn't look fast, it only took 4 hours to reach the United States. Everyone was paying attention to the movements of the two. The President of the United States sat in his seat with his hands crossed and his head slightly lowered. Charles Mellon sat calmly in his manner and looked at the sunlight outside the window. He believed that he hadn't left any traces behind. Just like the last time, this couple couldn't find him. Although the two of them looked scary, humans were not animals. Intelligence was the most dangerous thing. The Dugan family. Old Dugan didn't hide well this time. Someone found him. I hope that after today, the Dugan family will still exist, Charles Mellon muttered softly as he got up and opened a bottle of red wine. But how did they find the Dugan family? Who helped them? Or was it discovered by China? It seems like I have to be more careful. In the suburbs of the City of Angels, a manor had been turned into powder. When old Dugan realized that he was the target of the two, he looked desperate and bitter. However, he didn't escape and only ordered his people to hide. These two wouldn't stay in the United States forever. As the Empress, dressed in red, stood in the air, she first felt the fear and despair of the people in the manor below. Then, she happily raised her hands and pressed them down. The manor, which covered an area of more than 100 acres, seemed to have been run over by a road roller. The entire area sunk by 1 meter and became flat without any protrusions. Buildings, walls, gates, flower beds, vehicles, machinery, everything was deformed, flattened, and mixed with the soil. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. The visual effect of this kind of lethality wasn't any less than that of a nuclear bomb. All the military departments were frantically calculating the energy response at that moment. 273,000. When the Empress appeared, everyone had already detected that her energy level had increased from tens of thousands to 200,000. When she attacked, the energy response soared again and reached a terrifying 270,000. It seemed like this wasn't her limit. Be quiet. Renbachien looked down in a daze. There was already a depression in the ground that was dozens of acres in radius. The originally luxurious manor was now completely gone. There's no one alive. Very quiet. The Empress looked at him with sparkling eyes. She was very sure that there wasn't anyone alive. There's no one, no manor, nothing left. Perfect operation. Well done. Renbachien gave a thumbs up. Next. Mellon. Get rid of the big ones first and then look for the small ones. Perhaps some people can help us catch those bugs, tie them up, wrap them up, and deliver them to us by express delivery. Then, everyone saw the two people turn in another direction. Mellon held his wine glass. These two people were actually heading in the direction of the City of Friendship, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. No, they won't know it's me. They cleaned up after the incident and didn't leave any traces. Why are they heading in this direction? What are they going to do? Who's their target? Seeing the two people rushing in this direction, Charles Mellon felt more and more uneasy, and his forehead began to sweat. No matter who their target is, it's better to change locations just in case. The basement won't work. It's impossible to hide from that kind of power. Someone, arrange a flying car and leave now. Charles Mellon quickly walked outside and ordered loudly. His tone was full of anxiety. When these two people rushed in his direction, he realized the fear in his heart. It was left behind more than 20 years ago. Chapter 1257. The entire Melon Manor seemed to have been wiped off the face of the earth, and even the ground sank by 1 meter. Your Majesty, how did you do it? Renbochin still found it incredible when he saw this move for the second time. Just like this, and then like this. The Empress raised her hand, pressed it down, and then spread it out. Renbochin was speechless. I probably projected my divine sense and wrapped it around every particle in this area. According to you, it's air or something else. Then, I densely packed them and pressed them down. It's like... The Empress clapped her right hand and said, just like this. Renbochin pondered for a long time and decided that it wasn't gravity control. It was most likely the molecules in the air or something else. He had some ideas about the specific process, but he found it incredible. Is this the power of the immortal realm? It's really terrifying. This ability is completely different from everlasting heaven. If everlasting heaven was still considered martial arts, then at the immortal realm, it had completely transcended that level. It was like the difference between mortals and immortals. If those foreign races had come in person, I'm afraid we would have been wiped out in an instant. Just like what happened below. Maybe, but this move can only be used in such situations. There's no chance to use it against an opponent of the same level, the Empress said. If you meet the god of the earth spirit again, who will win? We'll know after we fight. Maybe it's time to find the location of the earth spirit. Renbochin had long coveted the soul transfer and life transfer technology of the earth spirit. He didn't have this ability in the past, but now that the Empress had reached this level, he could make plans early. Well, it's over here. I know you can see it. Did you say that Charles Melon ran away? Renbochin said a few words through the communicator and narrowed his eyes. He sensed danger when you were heading to Philadelphia, so he escaped first. I'm looking for his location. He can't run away, but give me some time. Before that, you can get rid of the rest of the Melon family. Watching his family members die one by one, his brothers, sisters, sons, and nephews die one by one, and then waiting for death, that would be a better punishment for him. I have to say, you really know how to talk. I want his position within a day. Watch him, don't let him escape. After switching off the communication device, Renbochin tilted his head and said, the main culprit escaped. This guy is quite vigilant, but it's useless. Let's find the others first. Charles Melon sat in the flying car and looked at the screen in front of him. A man and a woman stood in the air. As the woman's hand fell, the entire manor was erased. This scene caused Charles Melon's entire body to tremble. Fear. A person with this kind of power shouldn't exist in this world. There shouldn't be such a person on Earth. Then, his eyes turned bloodshot. The Melon family's manor that had been passed down for generations, the glory of the Melon family, and the collection of so many generations were all gone. I will kill you. Charles Melon squeezed out a few cold words from between his teeth. Also, I will kill the person who gave you the information. I will make him die a painful death. After squeezing out these 2 sentences, Charles Melon leaned back in his chair and began to calm down. Anger didn't make people stronger. Instead, it would make people lose their minds and reveal flaws. This was a saying that had been passed down in the Melon family. The most important thing now was to hide well and then find the person who gave the information to the man and the woman. At the same time, a conversation was taking place in another place. Mr. President, you'd better mobilize the satellites and the network to find the location of that Melon guy. Otherwise, only God knows if those 2 people will vent their anger on you. After all, this is a precedent, right? You don't want to betray your countrymen. No, no, no. They betrayed the United States first and even Earth. They also caused big trouble for the United States. They never considered the interests of the United States. You just found those who did things that shouldn't have been done. To describe it in one word, it should be, a traitor. No one will blame you for this. Everyone will understand that the Musk family will be on your side. Yes, the United States is our United States. We are on the same side. Okay, I'll wait for your good news. Hurry up. They don't have good tempers. You know that. For the next half of the day, Charles Mellon experienced the most torturous moment of his life. His clansmen died tragically one after another. They didn't even know what happened when they died. A company executive was suddenly smashed in the head in the office. A clansman who was on vacation was suddenly killed by a falling plaque while shopping. The news of the tragic deaths of his clansmen reached Charles Mellon's ears. It almost drove him crazy. However, what made him even more unable to accept was the deep fear. Those two people were looking for him. He couldn't leave the slightest trace. Otherwise, the Charles Mellon family would immediately disappear from this world. In one afternoon, he changed his location 3 times. This was the first time in his life that he experienced this kind of fear. It was also the first time he understood how terrifying it was to be searched by those two people. I found him. He's in the City of Angels. I've already sent you the address. He just moved here and shouldn't leave for 2 hours. We'll modify what he saw. He won't notice that you're on the way. Yes, when you appear in front of him, his expression will be very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Renbochin hung up the communication device, stretched his back, and said, I found him. It's faster than I expected. The Mellon family is still missing 4 people. However, it's better to find the main culprit first in case he runs off like a rabbit again. You lead the way. The Empress said faintly. This kind of action wouldn't make her feel happy, but the person who framed her had to be punished. After dealing with that guy and getting rid of a few key figures from the Mellon family in Dugan, she couldn't be bothered with the rest. An hour later, the two appeared in the City of Angels. At this time, Mellon already felt that something was wrong. There's a family member 30 kilometers away from them. Although I've already informed him to hide, according to their speed and well-informed information, he shouldn't be able to escape. Why haven't I received any news yet? Where are they going? No, they've been here before. Oh no, this is the previous video. Someone used it to replace the real whereabouts of the two people. Charles Mellon was horrified. He felt as if someone was squeezing his heart so tightly that he almost couldn't breathe. Quick, get out of here. Charles Mellon quickly got up and walked out. Polly. Charles Mellon shouted for his bodyguard. Prepare the flying car. However, when he opened the door, he didn't see Polly, but a man and a woman who were like demons in his eyes. Where are you going? Mr. Mellon. The bald man grinned at him, and Charles Mellon could even smell the scent of blood. You. Charles Mellon's face turned pale, and he couldn't help but step back. Although it's a pity that we have to say goodbye as soon as we meet, I have some good news. Do you want to hear it? The good news is, I'll reunite your family with you. Are you touched? Renbochin winked at the other party as a fireball appeared in his hand. However, before he could do anything, the Empress had already slapped him with her palm. 2 meters away, half of Charles Mellon's body disappeared before he could say anything. It's too bloody. Be careful of 404. Renbochin flipped his hand, and the fireball disappeared. Let's go. We can go back after dealing with a few important figures. It's a little boring, so it's better to go back and drink, the Empress said faintly. Chapter 1258. Renbochin didn't stay on Earth for long before boarding the spaceship again. This time, it wasn't just a few spaceships, but a fleet of 35 spaceships. Among them, 8 were giant spaceships that were more than 3,000 meters long and 20 were more than 2,000 meters long. This was the main force of the Earth Expeditionary Force. The other spaceships, which were more than 1,000 meters long, were handed over to the 8-armed race, and both sides sent troops to the 4-leaf clover planet. Of course, the 8-armed race was the main force, but Earth also sent more than 100,000 troops. This time, there were 30,000 of them. In addition to a large number of supplies, the spaceship also carried 3 robot production lines, as well as several satellites for communication and monitoring. These people were also the vanguard of the development of the 4-leaf clover planet. Then came the real immigrant army. Such a big event like Earth sending 100,000 troops naturally couldn't be kept a secret. In fact, the entire Earth was paying attention during this period. Just like what had happened before, when a country or civilization reached a certain level of development and hit a bottleneck, the most common way to alleviate internal conflicts was to go to war with foreign countries. This was the case now. After more than 100 years of peaceful development, although Earth hadn't reached a limit yet, the social strata of each country had long been solidified. The conflicts between different social strata were gradually increasing, even reaching a sharp and dangerous point. Because of this, governments began to restrict the application of artificial intelligence in various fields a long time ago. However, this only delayed the outbreak of conflicts. Therefore, after the two sides signed the agreement, the news of colonizing a new planet was quickly announced to the public, and it immediately attracted the attention of countless people. Planets, colonies, vast lands, more resources, and opportunities brought about by war and reclamation all meant development, status, and wealth. Of course, there were also many organizations that called for peaceful coexistence and common development with aliens, such as the Alien Human Rights Organization, the Alien Protection Association, and so on. With their various magical statements, they attracted a lot of attention and many supporters who had nothing better to do. Sometimes, when Renbochin saw this news, he had the urge to throw them out of the wall between the two worlds and let them express their ideas and develop organizations among the alien races. Perhaps they could really develop a group of pacifists who resisted war among the alien races. Of course, it was more likely that they would be delivering food to the alien races. Those alien races are still outside the wall between the two worlds? Renbochin asked. Renbochin didn't play a big role in the expedition to the 4-leaf clover planet, but the Empress and the king of the 8-armed race would be involved. The octopus tribe had sent out 3 kings. Including the great Empress, there were 4 sempiternal realm experts in total. This was more than enough to suppress the lightning barbarian. He needed to deal with some other issues, such as the Flint Rock tribe and the Red Sand tribe. After the Earth Spirit retreated in defeat, Stainless City mobilized 5,000 Flint Rock tribe and 80,000 Red Sand tribe soldiers to stand in front of the wall of the two worlds. The experts of the human tribe retreated into the 60,000 mountains after meeting the two tribes from afar, hoping to lure the two tribes in. These two races loved fire and hated water, so the forested environment of the 60,000 mountains was not suitable for them. If the Flintstones started a fire, then the 80,000 Scarlet Sand tribe members would not be able to escape death. They only liked fire, but they were not completely unafraid of it. It seemed like this plan had failed. These two races had no intention of entering the 60,000 mountains. Yes, both openings are now occupied by them. Moreover, they have the intention to expand to the east. Minister of War Qin Chuan said. Renbochin pondered for a while and said, "East is the direction of the ocean. Although they won't get too close to the coast, we can't let them find out that the territory of the Blade Sickle tribe has fallen into our hands. We have to give them some trouble. The weakest member of the Flint Rock clan is at least at the Kismet Heaven level. There are at least 500 Cardinal Heaven level members and 50 Longevity Heaven level members. Also, their bodies are covered in fire, and they are very powerful. Just the Flintstones alone are a great enemy, not to mention the 80,000 Scarlet Sand Tribe members. We can't fight them head-on, Qin Chuan said directly. Ren Baqian thought for a while and said, of course, we can't do it head-on. Half of their logistics are handled by themselves, and the other half is handled by the low-level races deployed by Stainless City. As long as we can cut off their logistics, they will fall into chaos. What should I do? Let Li Fu and the rest attack the logistics team. As long as they send out a portion of their experts, it'll be hard for us to succeed. We can't underestimate the Scarlet Sand race either. As long as there are enough of them, when hundreds or thousands of them fire their Scarlet Sand arrows at the same time, even Longevity Heaven might not be able to deal with them. Li Fu and the others are still too few in numbers. Qin Chuan sighed. Ren Baqian frowned. The Scarlet Sand race was indeed troublesome. Although each of them could only fire 10 Scarlet Sand arrows a day, and the range was only 100 to 200 meters, their power wasn't small. At close range, they were much more powerful than a sniper rifle, and their speed was extremely fast. If it was a team of thousands of Scarlet Sand race members, it would be difficult to evade the Scarlet Sand arrows. Even the Longevity Heaven experts would inevitably suffer casualties under such circumstances. However, as long as the 10 Scarlet Sand arrows were fired, the Scarlet Sand race basically wouldn't be a threat. Why don't we use electricity like how we dealt with Sickle? As long as we get some water on the ground and connect the electricity when they pass through, we can electrocute them all. Even if some of them are lucky enough to survive, the threat will be greatly reduced. Qin Chuan suddenly proposed an idea. Ren Baqian looked at him in surprise. Putting aside the feasibility of this idea, Qin Chuan actually used his brain. Sir Qin, your residence ran into water 2 days ago and was electrocuted once. Even your beard was burnt. Lian Liang from the Department of the Army revealed Qin Chuan's secret with a smile. Then, Lian Liang flew out of the hole. We don't need to care about the miscellaneous grains that are being transported the most. We only need to pay attention to the earth fire fruit and flame rice. These two are the main foods of the Flint Rock race. They need to grow in a high-temperature environment and have high storage requirements. In addition to these two, they also have another type of food, the Scarlet Sand race. From the information, the living conditions of both sides are similar. The Flint Rock race provides protection for the Scarlet Sand race and also uses them as food reserves. Both sides have a rather peculiar coexistence. As such, as long as the supply of earth fire fruit is cut off, they will fall into chaos. Even if all 80,000 of the Scarlet Sand race become rations, it might not be enough for them to eat for long. Moreover, the Scarlet Sand race won't give up so easily, the Empress, who had been staring at the information in silence, suddenly said. Everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing this. Your Majesty is right. As long as we destroy the earth fire fruit, they will kill each other without us having to do anything. Ren Baqian nodded. He had thought of this point just now, but it was only a vague idea and wasn't as clear as what the Empress had said. That's right. If it's just the earth fire fruit and flame rice, it will be a much smaller target. Moreover, it can be destroyed at low temperatures. There are many ways to think of. However, we have to destroy the other rations as well. We can't let Stainless City have it easy. As long as we let them fall into chaos, we will have less trouble. The White Lotus Society has been developing for a long time and has a large number of believers. It's considered a large force in the vicinity of Stainless City, and it's time to get them into action. Moreover, it's a riot between some low-level races that won't be easily noticed in the early stages. By the time Stainless City finds out, it will already be too late. After a round of discussion, everyone had a rough idea of what to do. All that was left was how to implement it. At this point, Renbochin was very confident. Some of the things that he had prepared for the Flint Rock race could be put to use now. Chapter 1259. Outside the two-world wall, in a mountain somewhere, there were a few small houses. Leader. There's news from the north. Su Jiaojiao knocked on the door and saw a handsome and elegant middle-aged man sitting cross-legged in the room. His long hair was scattered on the ground, and there was a layer of dust around him. Oh! Lin Dong opened his eyes. His gaze was like two unsheathed swords. However, that sharp feeling disappeared in the blink of an eye, as if it was just an illusion. They said that they want to mobilize the White Lotus Society to cause chaos among the foreign races and destroy their fields and food as much as possible. I can't do this without authorization, so I have to wake you up, Su Jiaojiao said. Lin Dong closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, he waved his sleeves, and the dust around him rolled up into a long dragon and rushed out of the door. It only exploded after dozens of meters and rustled down. I'm finally going to mobilize them, Lin Dong said softly. He and Su Jiaojiao had stayed here for 20 years, overseeing the overall situation of the White Lotus Society. As the situation in the White Lotus Society stabilized, there were not many times when Lin Dong needed to look over. He would often cultivate for dozens of days until the cultivation ended or Su Jiaojiao woke him up. This kind of life was indeed somewhat boring. Now that the White Lotus Society was finally mobilized, he was quite happy. As a famous religious expert and the leader of an evil cult, he liked to cause trouble the most. This was related to professional ethics. The collision of blood and fire, the watering of life, could form the most beautiful flower of faith. Lin Dong opened the map. Different races were marked with different colors. There were 31 mid-level races under Void Dirt City. Among them, 17 were dominant, and the White Lotus Society preached accounted for about a third of them. There were nearly 200 low-level races, among which the White Lotus Society could influence 70%. The relationships between these races were far more complicated than the many countries on Earth. However, Lin Dong already had a plan in mind. He spent half a day choosing his target. Then, he made a plan and sent out the order. Next, he just had to wait for chaos to break out. 3 days later, 1,300 kilometers southwest of Void Dirt City. The Fly tribe with 2 pairs of compound eyes and the short and stout Rock tribe had a fight over water that would not attract anyone's attention. Even 2 villages would fight over a water source, not to mention 2 races. Moreover, they were from a low-level race. Although it was just an insignificant battle, the Flies came prepared and killed more than a dozen Rock Tuo people. The next day, an even bigger conflict broke out between the 2 sides. The stronger Rock Tuo tribe was ambushed, and over 100 of their tribesmen died at the hands of the Flies. The Rock Tuo tribe's village was in an uproar, and all the youths gathered to fight against the other side. The result was still the Fly tribe's victory. A day later, the Rock Tuo village was completely destroyed. Only a few people managed to escape. The Flies didn't take over the village either. Instead, they burned down the entire village along with the fields. Up until now, this battle had not attracted anyone's attention. At the same time, in several other directions of Void-stained City, fights between different races were taking place almost simultaneously, involving more than a dozen races. Soon, these ordinary fights over water, prey, or other trivial matters expanded. If one were to pay attention, one would realize that unlike the previous battles of occupying the other party's villages, farmlands, and hunting grounds, this time, it was more of burning everything down, and the participating races would retreat to their own territory. Soon, these fights spread to the mid-level races behind them. When the hazy tribe behind Rock Tuo sent out more than a dozen people, but they were intercepted and killed halfway, a chaotic battle began. One by one, the mid-level races that had long had conflicts with each other were implicated. In less than 2 months, this battle involved nearly 60 low-level races and 10 mid-level races, and the scope of this battle was still expanding. It was just like the Second World War that involved the whole world. Under the influence of the mastermind behind the scenes, the conflicts between the various races that had been suppressed by Void-Stained City completely erupted. A large number of villages were massacred, and large areas of farmlands and forests were burned down. Even some of the races in Void-Stained City broke out in small-scale conflicts. Lindong's side is doing well. At least 100 races have been involved in these 3 months, accounting for half of the races near Void-Stained City. The farmlands and hunting grounds that have been destroyed occupy at least 1/3 of the area within a 500-kilometer radius of Void-Stained City, Renbochin said with a smile as he held the report. Sure enough, this kind of thing still needs to be done by Lindong. He's really good at this. Is there still no response from Void-Stained City? The Empress looked up and asked. Her hands didn't stop moving as if there was an invisible box between them. Her hands moved along with the surface of the box and pressed it from time to time. As she released her hands, the invisible box fell to the ground and created a small pit. Your Majesty is getting more and more proficient, Renbochin praised. The box in the Empress's hands was actually just air, but it became solid in her hands. Although the Empress had been using cheats, she had put in a lot of effort. She then continued, there's no response from Void-Stained City. The Rolling Wind race has ruled that area for too long and has long lost their vigilance. They don't care about the ordinary races, are arrogant, and regard themselves as noble. They even disdain to breathe the same air as the ordinary races. Just like raising pigs, they've long since raised themselves into pigs. Of course, this is also because they have the strength to suppress everything, so they don't care about anything and react very slowly. It's not just them. Even those intermediate races have a strong sense of racial superiority. Among the thousands of races, there are only 361 intermediate races, which is equivalent to 1/10 of the total. Furthermore, the stronger the race, the smaller the number of individuals, and the greater the difference in the overall population. The Empress leisurely said, in that case, it's not easy for Void-Stained City to react so quickly to the affairs of the human race. Actually, I'm very curious about what happened back then. The human race actually became the public enemy of all the races. Even after so many years, the thousands of races still didn't sit idly by after hearing about the human race. This isn't an ordinary enmity. Renbochin said thoughtfully. These aren't important. In any case, they will die and we will live. The Empress snorted and looked up at Renbochin. That batch of supplies should have been delivered. Are they really effective? Otherwise, I'll make a trip personally. We can't always leave everything to Your Majesty. You're just one person. Renbochin shook his head. In theory, there shouldn't be a problem. The Flint and Red Sand tribes put charcoal in the boxes to maintain the temperature of the earth, fire, fruit and flame rice. This time, what was sent to the front line was a dry ice manufacturing machine and a production line for 14 5 by 186 mm special bullets. The bullets can be filled with dry ice, and after penetrating the boxes, they will break open and destroy the earth, fire, fruit and flame rice at low temperatures. The Red Sand tribe's red sand arrows can't stop the bullets. 2 bullets are enough to destroy a box. The only problem is that the storage and transportation of these bullets are more troublesome, but it's much easier than fighting the Flint tribe. Let's wait and see then. The Empress nodded. In order for the operation to go smoothly, I also sent the poison healer, Suyu, to the front line. I think we can achieve our goal. Renbochin shrugged. Chapter 1260. On the boundless grassland, a giant elephant walked on the dirt road, accompanied by the rumbling footsteps of the giant beast and the sound of wooden wheels. Behind the giant elephants, which were about 7 to 8 meters tall, were wooden carts filled with food. They were almost the size of train carriages. Among them, the wooden carts in the middle were the most heavily guarded. They were huge wooden carriages, and if the carriages were opened, one could see layers upon layers of earth fire fruits and flame rice. In the middle of the carriages was a fire pit used to maintain the temperature in the carriages. Surrounding the convoy was an escort team consisting of 3,000 Red Sand Race members and 100 Flint Rock members. The Flint Rock members were tall, and the adults were more than 4 meters tall. Their greenish-gray skin was full of cracks, and flames were flowing in the cracks. The Red Sand Race members were hunched and only about 1.5 meters tall. Their bodies were brown, and their heads looked like lizards. In the sky far away from this convoy, a miniature drone was hovering in the air and transmitting the situation of the convoy back to the stopover point not far away. Fire Serpent Tao Qian looked at the convoy on the screen and said, "They're here. 3,000 Red Sand Race members and 100 Flint Rock members. This is twice as many as the previous convoy. After all, we just devoured a convoy a few days ago." "They will definitely be prepared," Li Fu said. "There aren't many people in this convoy. We should be able to devour them directly." Tao Qian was eager to try. "Are there any experts in the convoy?" Li Fu asked. "There are 2 Flint Rock members with an energy value of about 35,000 and are advanced longevity heaven experts. However, they are slow and will retreat after one attack. They can't stop us." Tao Qian exclaimed in admiration, "This set of equipment is really convenient. We can know the enemy's every move from dozens of kilometers away and even know their strength. Prince Ren is really an extraordinary person." Li Fu was silent for a moment. He had to admit that there were many functional items in Dayo, and they were all very useful. Ren Baqian didn't lie to him. "Let's try out those things and see how effective they are. If they are effective, we won't have to fight them in close combat in the future. Although we can cover 2 kilometers in an instant, we won't be entangled by them. Besides, the Red Sand Race's shooting range isn't that far." Not far away from the 2 of them, many experts were either quietly recuperating or making use of the time to cultivate. A very small number of people were doing other things. "My e-book is out of battery. Can anyone lend it to me?" "Take mine. Remember to recharge it." "Does Naruto have it?" "No, I don't read picture books." "Does Monk Lamp have it?" A few ancient race longevity heaven experts surrounded a jar and were smoking the scorpion pipe. The others stayed far away from them. Even a cardinal heaven expert would be seriously injured if he was accidentally stung by the scorpions in the jar, but it was better than nothing for a longevity heaven expert. "Everyone, prepare yourselves. We will attack in an hour." Li Fu's voice rang out, and everyone opened their eyes. The few of them stuffed the e-books into their backpacks. The gazes of the aboriginals, which had been in a daze, immediately cleared up. Half an hour later, a few slogans suddenly rang out from the advancing transport team. The entire team immediately stopped as a few black dots appeared in the northeast direction. "R. Tribely of people of humans, Ren, of people, of, not only in the northeast, but also in the north, northwest, and east and west. There are at least 80 humans. There are at least 80 humans in the north, northwest, and east and west. How dare they attack in the grassland? This time, they won't be able to leave." After a short period of chaos, the convoy abandoned most of the carriages and formed 6 small phalanxes. More than 100 experts from the Flint Rock race were on the periphery, ready to entangle the humans. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The red sand race discovered the enemies 5 kilometers away. It only took them half a minute to get into formation, but the humans were already 1 kilometer away. Both sides were extremely fast. Human. How dare you come? You can just die right here, shouted an expert from the Flint Rock race. Many people from the Flint Rock race were ready to attack. However, to their surprise, those humans stopped in the air 2 miles away. They had no intention of landing on the ground. Moreover, each of them was holding a 2-meter-long stick in their hands. What are they doing? As soon as this thought popped up in everyone's mind, they saw the black stick suddenly burst into flames. Palm-sized bullets shot out from the muzzles. Intercept. Although they didn't know what it was, the red sand race still reacted. The 6 phalanxes instantly shot out countless scarlet sand arrows, forming a screen of arrows. The Flint Rock race waved their arms, swatting away the bullets in front of them. However, the speed at which the bullets were fired was extremely fast. In almost 5 seconds, each person's 20 bullets were used up. Half of them were blocked, and when the bullets exploded, they immediately emitted a white mist, causing the surrounding temperature to drop instantly. That was the evaporation of the dry ice in the bullets. Large amounts of carbon dioxide filled the air. Many of the Flint Rock race people breathed in the carbon dioxide. The flames on their bodies retracted, almost extinguishing like candles in the wind. The other half of the bullets hit the boxes in the middle. Bullet holes filled the boxes, and white mist seeped out of them. After the 20 bullets were fired, the human experts didn't wait for the other side to react. They disappeared in front of the 2 races even faster than when they had come. Most of the red sand race and Flint Rock race were confused. They didn't understand what had happened. They had used a pipe to shoot something from far away and then run. Were these people messing with them? So cold. What is that? Why is it so cold? A few of the red sand race warriors shivered. Ever since the white mist appeared around them, the temperature had plummeted. It was like winter in the south. Not good. One of the red sand race experts suddenly thought of something. A few of them jumped onto the boxes and opened the lids. Cold air rushed into their faces. The fire in the boxes had been extinguished a long time ago. All the earth fire fruits and flame rice were covered in a layer of frost. The color had turned from fiery red to green. Only now did the 2 races realize that the strange weapons were used to destroy the earth fire fruits and flame rice. They opened all the boxes, and without exception, all the earth fire fruits and flame rice turned green and lost their effects. This time, the transport team was in a dilemma. They were already halfway through their journey. Should they continue forward or retreat? If they continued forward, there weren't many earth fire fruits and flame rice left. But if they retreated, they would also waste time. Many of the Flint Rock race experts were furious. They pounded the ground to vent their anger, causing a fire. If the weather was drier, with the help of the wind, it would probably become a prairie fire. Fortunately, that didn't happen. The fire didn't spread too far and was soon extinguished. The 2 races discussed for a while and finally decided to go back the way they came. They also sent people back as fast as they could to prepare the earth fire fruits and flame rice. Success. They cleared out the carts. The earth fire fruits and flame rice were thrown to the side. The people who retreated looked at the scene in front of them and smiled. This operation was simple, and the results weren't bad. They didn't even have to fight with the other side to destroy the goods they were transporting. The things Prince Ren sent are really useful. We have drones to observe the other side's troops and weaknesses. We can attack them from 2 miles away. We can fight and leave as we please. They can't do anything to us. Yeah. With these weapons, we can play the foreign races in the palm of our hands. I watched a war when I was young. I didn't know that wars could be fought like this. How did they think of these dry ice bullets? What an eye-opener. They went back the way they came. This is an unexpected gain. However, they will definitely increase their troops next time. With more precautions, it won't be so easy next time. Next time, we can attack at night. The two races don't have good night vision. They will only discover us when we are very close. By then, it will be too late, Li Yuanzhu said. We have night vision goggles, so we can see their troops clearly even from 2 miles away. First, set a small target, such as 1 second. Chapter 1261. 3 years passed on Earth. 1 second, Renbaqian was in the palace, and the next second, he was on a spaceship. He walked out of the room, went to the command room, and found a seat to sit down. Boss. The captain of the spaceship was a Chinese man in his 40s named Shui Gui. He was tall and had a determined look on his face. Seeing Renbaqian come in, he straightened his body and hammered his chest. Greetings, boss. Renbaqian and Ren Wanyan had long invested a large amount of money in various high-tech companies, and aerospace was the most important. Due to his special status and contributions, Renbaqian had also obtained many benefits that ordinary people couldn't obtain. From the beginning, the bases and spaceship manufacturing bases on Earth had sent many people to learn. The New Century Aerospace Company of the Ren family was currently the largest private aerospace company on Earth, and its main business was the manufacturing of spaceships. This spaceship was naturally Renbaqian's. Today, New Century Aerospace Company had 4 giant spaceships, and this was one of them. It was also the most luxurious one. Renbaqian rested his chin on his hands and looked at the screen in front of him. On it was the figure of the Empress. It looked like she was in the mountains. A few kilometers in front of the Empress was a tall figure in a sorry state. Not long after, the Empress caught up with Thunder Barbaric King. The two of them exchanged blows several times, and the surrounding mountains began to collapse. The shockwave was like a substance sweeping toward the surroundings. The soil, gravel, trees, and everything around the two of them were swept away. Not long after, a small half of a mountain peak was collapsed by the aftermath of the two of them. On the screen, Thunder Barbaric King was covered in lightning, and every time he attacked, there were charred marks around him. After a while, Thunder Barbaric King was smashed into the mountain by the Empress, creating a huge pit with a radius of hundreds of meters. It was as if a meteorite had fallen. Even so, Thunder Barbaric King was only injured but not killed. He jumped up and spat out blood as he fled. These Thunder Barbarians have caused too much damage to our spaceship. We can't get close at all, Shui Gui said. Renbaqian nodded. These Thunder Barbarians were good at using thunder and lightning, which was very destructive to technological products. Once an arrow hit the spaceship, all the equipment on the spaceship would be instantly destroyed by the electric current. The war between the 8-arm race and the Earth Alliance army had been going on for 2 years. Whether it was technology or experts, the Thunder Barbarians were far from being a match. The biggest advantage of the Thunder Barbarians was that they were all soldiers when they fought on their own. However, the high-tech weapons of mankind were the least afraid of the human wave tactics used by low-level soldiers. Thunder Barbarians below the Cardinal Heaven level were like targets in the face of a large number of air cannons. Even Cardinal Heaven level Thunder Barbarians couldn't resist the electromagnetic cannons. As for the experts above the Longevity Celestial Realm, there were naturally experts from the 8-armed race to deal with them. During the past 2 years, the Lightning Barbarians had been forced to retreat step by step. Now, there were still a small number of Lightning Barbarians who were trapped in a corner. However, there were still many thunder barbarians harassing the land occupied by the humans and the Ba race. Often, when the thunder barbarians waved their arms, a group of people would riot. In the past 2 years, it could be said that they had killed many people. The number of the thunder barbarians was less than 80 million, only 20% of the number before the war. Of course, the humans and the 8-arm race also suffered casualties. Out of the 40 spaceships before the battle, 16 were destroyed. So far, humans had invested a total of 70 spaceships, 300,000 soldiers, and a total of 10 robot production lines, producing more than 500,000 robots. The 8-limbed tribe had invested over 100,000 soldiers and 3 sempiternal realm queens into the operation. How long have you been chasing them? Ren Baqian asked. 6 hours ago, they revealed their tracks, and the lady boss immediately chased after them. They didn't want to fight at all and only fought when they couldn't escape. Shuegue was in awe. This lady boss wasn't as beautiful as a fairy, but she was very heroic. However, the deepest impression she left on people was that she was frighteningly fierce when she attacked. She could be called a human-shaped nuclear bomb. She was also the only one among the humans who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the experts of the 8-arm race. What's their goal? Ren Baqian looked at the image. The ground and mountains were like fleeting shadows under their feet. If it weren't for the artificial intelligence system, the image wouldn't be able to keep up with their speed. Most of the time, they could only see a black and a red line. I was about to talk about this. Although they changed direction several times, the general direction is likely to be the Myriad Thunder Valley. That place is shrouded in lightning all year round, and it's difficult for spaceships to monitor it. This is probably a trap. As Shuegue spoke, another holographic image of the 4-leaf clover planet was displayed. From the direction, the two were indeed heading in the direction of the Myriad Thunder Valley. For humans and the 8-arm race, that place was a dead end. For the Thunder Barbarian, it was a holy land. However, even if he entered it, he would most likely die. Zixiao, it's time to come back. His goal is the Myriad Thunder Valley. This is a trap. Ren Baqian's words were transmitted to the Empress through the communication device. A cold look flashed in the Empress's eyes. She hesitated for a moment and stopped in her tracks. She was also clear about the situation in the Myriad Thunder Valley. There was no need to take such a big risk to beat people up. As the Empress stopped, the Thunder Barbarian King actually stopped as well. He turned around to take a look, made a provocative gesture at the Empress, and then turned to escape. However, after a few seconds, he realized that the Empress didn't chase after him at all. He spat and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he didn't turn back and swaggered off. This bunch of damned fellows are like rats and too slippery. Who said that the Thunder Barbarians are upright? The Empress said angrily when she returned to the warship. Those who aren't slippery are all dead. Ren Baqian spread his hands. At first, the Thunder Barbarian was indeed quite upright and died very quickly. Those who can live until now are definitely not the same as before. He got away again, the Empress said coldly. Don't do it yourself next time. At this level, it will be very difficult to make them stay if they want to escape. We will set up a trap in a few days and see if we can lure them out, Ren Baqian said. The last time I killed one of their royal experts in public, they still weren't lured out. These fellows are becoming more and more timid, and their whereabouts are becoming more and more secretive. The Empress shook her head slightly. This time, he attacked Yaofeng City and destroyed half of the city with one blow. Then, he immediately fled far away, and the others simply couldn't catch up. However, he will be fine in a few days. 9 Soup King's injuries should be recovering soon. When she comes back, there will be 4 sempiternal experts and we will seize the opportunity to kill him. The Empress casually picked up a wine bottle and began to drink it. After chasing for a few hours and fighting a total of 5 times, she was very thirsty. The second wine bottle, ton 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 ton. The third wine bottle, ton 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 ton. The captain originally wanted to come over and say something, but his face turned green when he saw the label on the wine bottle. There were big red words on the label, 96%. Is this a poison? It's definitely not for humans to drink, right? Shuegui's face was full of admiration, especially when he looked at Renbochin. The admiration was almost coming out of his eyes. Renbochin snapped his fingers, and a 3-inch tall flame emerged from his fingertips. The Empress exhaled and suddenly spat out a ball of fire. The Empress's eyebrows instantly became soft. The two of them had done this kind of small interaction many times, but she found it interesting every time. Return to Axayan Onsu land. Renbochin's face was calm and indifferent as if he didn't see it. Axayan Onsu land was one of the 237 regions of Zxiao planet and was also controlled by Deek, and Renbochin named the land he obtained on the 4-leaf clover planet Axayan Onsu land. He was grateful to Deekan for fighting for a chance of survival for the future of the human race. He would rather destroy his soul and refine his body into a weapon without consciousness. His heart to protect the human race was very touching. Renbochin also respected him. On the other hand, this place could also be used as a retreat route for the human race on Zxiao planet. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.